Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Riska. Can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Sarasky? Mrs. Koski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanes?
Here.
Mrs. Yarko?
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Sarowski cannot make it here tonight. She had an unavoidable work conflict. She was trying to phone into the meeting and doing everything she could to participate, but because of the lawyers, apparently that's not allowed. Throwing Mr. Petrosak under the bus on his maiden voyage with us. So, so Ms. Sarowski is watching, and she will be back for the next meeting. This is, again, a budget workshop meeting, so we are going to be learning more about the budget, which will be voted on at the next city council meeting, which is Monday, May 1st. Is that right, Mr. Vanderpool? Today we have a lot of interesting things to go over, and so once again, I'll turn it over to our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and I'm very pleased on behalf of the managers and directors present tonight to kick off the second budget hearing, as you noted. So it'll be a similar format to the first one. You'll hear from our Budget and Finance Director providing an overview, and then we have a number of special presentations. We'll again have plenty of time for questions and comments and ideas from the City Council. And just a reminder, if you do have budget amendments, and you do have a couple that are before you that came up at the last budget hearing, but if you have any more, we'd like to hear from those so we can get them on the agenda and incorporate into the budget for the May 1st approval. And you will need to take action on the two that are before you this evening as well. So at this point, I'm very pleased to introduce Budget and Finance Director Jennifer Varney.
Ms. Varney.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Petrusek, and members of council. Tonight, we will continue our budget workshop, including discussion of Parks and Recreation, City Development, Public Library, Public Works, and the Water and Sewer Fund. We'll start with Parks and Recreation Fund. Parks and Recreation Fund revenue totaled $10.2 million. About half of that revenue comes from the Recreating Recreation millage at $4.9 million. And then the next largest source is a transfer from the general fund at $3.3 million. And the general fund continues to fund the Parks and Rec expenses that are not related to recreating recreation. And the fund also receives revenue from fees such as baseball and softball leagues, recreation classes, splash pad admission, and ice skate rental. Now, the proposed budget for Parks and Rec totals $10.1 million, and personnel costs are the largest expense, as with many of our departments, at $3.8 million. And then the debt service on the bonds to fund the recreating recreation improvements is about $3 million a year. Expenditures in this fund increased $570,000 or 6%. We added a new recreation supervisor to oversee evening events, and part-time wages are increasing due to wage inflation as well as additional staffing required for new programs. The costs of contractual services such as grass cutting, snow removal, and athletic field maintenance are increasing, as well as the cost for special event rentals for events like Sterling Frights and Sterling Christmas. Highlights from the capital budget include replacement lighting for the soccer field at Dodge Park, installation of a new pitching area at the Delia Park Cricket Field, resurfacing of the pickleball court at Magnolia Park, the replacement of the section of Clinton River Park Trail from Farmstead to Donovan, the resurfacing and expansion of the pathway at Mark Sawyer's Family Park. And the Beaver Creek parking lot repairs are funded through CDBG. Now back to the general fund, which as a reminder totaled $125.4 million. And tonight we're going to cover city development, the public library, and the Department of Public Works. City development includes 5 departments: building, engineering, planning, neighborhood services, and economic development. And this office has 30 full-time and 19 part-time employees. The proposed city development budget totals $6.5 million. And the city development budget increased $700,000 or 12.1%. A part-time electrical inspector was converted to full-time and an assistant city planner was added. Funds are proposed for outside inspection services to supplement current staff. And we have weekly paddling assessments planned. And there was also a change in the accounting for nuisance abatement, which increases expenditures but is offset by revenue. The capital budget includes a robotic survey instrument for engineering, funding for Clinton River Bank stabilization projects, and replacement personal computers. The public library budget totals $3.1 million, and the library has 14 full-time and 25 part-time employees. The library budget increased $130,000 or 4.5%. And the proposed budget includes a conversion of a part-time librarian to full-time. And funds are included for an update to the programming center and an expansion to the makerspace. Proposed capital includes the installation of a children's music garden and the replacement of the skylights. The final general fund department is the Department of Public Works, which totals $13.4 million and includes refuse costs of $6.3 million. Public Works consists of 4 divisions with 34 full-time and 18 part-time employees. The budget for Public Works increased by $1.8 million or 15.4%, and the majority of the increase is due to the expected cost increases for the new refuse contract, which will begin in May of 2024. The capital budget includes the replacement of 2 pickup trucks, a dump truck, and a street sweeper, and a new fleet management system is also proposed. Finally, the water and sewer fund totals $60.7 million, which is 26% of the total fund budget. This fund includes 3 divisions with 39 full-time and 10 part-time employees, and over 75%, or about $46 million of the costs in water and sewer, are controlled by the Great Lakes Water Authority and the Macomb County Public Works Office. And over $39 million of those costs, 85%, are fixed, which means they're incurred regardless of how much water is used. Expenditures in the water and sewer fund increased $1 million or 1.7%. The GLWA cost increase the city saw was 0.7%, and sewage disposal costs from Macomb County increased 3.1%. Debt service costs from the MID also increased, along with repair costs due to water main breaks and fuel costs for water and sewer vehicles. Highlights from the capital budget include the replacement of a water service worker truck, a dump truck, and commercial water meters. Now, the proposed budget includes a rate increase of 4% to cover the increased costs and also includes a contribution to fund balance. And this will increase the average household water bill from $68 per month last year, as seen here, to about $72 a month, or $4 per month. Now, this is a comparison to our surrounding communities from last year, because we don't know what their rates are going to be for the upcoming budget year. But you can see that last year we were the lowest of our surrounding communities, and even at $72, we would still be at the bottom of our surrounding communities. And a goal was to strengthen our fund balance in the water and sewer fund, and we are making progress. But weather is a very big factor in whether the water and sewer fund has extra for fund balance. But if we assume normal weather and a 4 to 5% annual increase, we should be close to our 25% goal by 2026. And with the addition of the Water Smart portal and a $5 monthly bill credit for paperless billing and auto pay, It will be easier than ever for households to monitor and control their water usage. Finally, tonight, we have two budget amendments that were requested at the last budget workshop. The first is to increase the budget by $35,000 for membership in the National League of Cities and attendance at the annual conference. And the second is to increase the budget by $25,000 to fund an environmental study to look at best practices in lawn care management. Now, these, as Mr. Vanderpool indicated, these should be voted on tonight for incorporation into the final budget that will be adopted at the May 1st City Council meeting. That concludes my overview, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Vanderpool.
And thank you. And our first presentation this evening, departmental presentation that is Parks and Rec. We are all very proud of the best-in-class park system that has developed in Sterling Heights over the years, especially most recently through Recreating Recreation, approved by the voters in 2016. The parks, including Dodge Park, have become a magnet for residents of all ages. In fact, Thursdays throughout the summer, as City Council can attest to because you're all there every week, in Dodge Park have become mini Sterling Fests all summer long. It's amazing to see all the thousands of people out there. So at this point, our Parks and Rec Director, Kyle Langlois, will discuss some ongoing and new initiatives included in the proposed budget.
Mr. Langlois.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Taylor, members of council, and all gathered here tonight. It's once again my honor to be here this evening to provide updates on various parks and recreation initiatives that are priorities included in the upcoming budget and beyond. The focus of today's presentation will be on non-motorized path projects around the city, as well as highlighting some of the department's capital requests for the upcoming fiscal year. As you know from our master planning process and a number of projects that have been brought forward for consideration and approval, the City of Sterling Heights has taken an aggressive approach over the last few years in the planning and implementation of non-motorized projects. From resurfacing most all of the paths in the park system, to installing the nature trail at Delia Park, to planning pedestrian routes with new road projects, and the list goes on. However, despite all of these great successes, the city has much more ground to cover with this initiative, starting with next fiscal year's budget. The first non-motorized amenity to cover is the Clinton River Trail System, which is by far the most used trail in the city, but also is the most challenging to maintain due to its location within a mature forest and its proximity to the Clinton River. The city has been able to resurface and widen stretches of the trail from the Edison Corridor at South Clinton River Park to Farmstead Park, with funding from the Great Lakes Restoration Grant, as well as Recreating Recreation. But that covers less than 2 miles of the full 6¼ miles of trail making up that system. In addition, the department's annual budget to date has included a line item to make sectional repairs of trails and concrete throughout the park system, which generally has small problem areas or specific emergency reroutes of the trail due to riverbank erosion. Despite this ongoing work, the trail has problem areas that require a multi-year plan for repairs and resurfacing. In fact, the video that you are watching on the screen shows a transition from recently resurfaced pathway to a section that requires attention, which I will discuss in more detail shortly. I do want to note that while we do have some problem areas, the trail system as a whole is in decent condition. And yes, the end of my video was our GoPro camera falling off the cart that I was using when we hit a bad patch on the path. So that was not planned, by the way, so just worked out perfectly. For fiscal year 2023-2024, the proposed budget includes completing the resurfacing of the trail section, which is the connection between Farmstead Park and Donovan Park. Equaling just under 1/2 mile, this has been deemed the highest priority section in the worst condition, with specific problem areas notated by the numbers along the trail on the map on the screen. The photos that you are looking at now on the screen are specific examples of different areas along this stretch of trail that will be addressed in the upcoming year with council's approval. Work will include a pulverization of what is currently there, removing tree roots where necessary, and laying down the top coat surface in a wider footprint up to 10+ feet wherever possible to help two-way traffic better flow through the trails. Other small-scale priority repairs will include smoothing the transitions at the bridges north of Riverland, replacing fencing along the trails, reestablishing trail width in areas of sediment buildup, temporarily filling troublesome potholes, and addressing any other items that come up as a result of heavy use or flooding events. In addition, calendar year 2023 will mark the beginning of signage replacement along the Clinton River Trail to mirror what has already been completed on our newest trails in the city. The signs have more information than previous signs. They'll be strategically located to take into account the messaging we are trying to convey, while also minimizing the impact on aesthetics. I do want to be transparent that this work will take time and will result in some closures of the trails along the way, but we know that it'll be worth it in the long run and make for a more enjoyable experience for our residents and visitors. Speaking, as I mentioned, of Donovan Park, the park maintenance team will also begin transitioning recently acquired and adjacent green space to temporary overflow parking this year. This effort will serve to bridge the gap as we bring forward requests in future years for the establishment of a formal parking lot to help support the ball field and trail use activities at Donovan Park. In similar fashion, the proposed budget has the Parks and Recreation Department giving attention to two other existing path systems, which is at Mark Sawyer's Family Park as well as Moravian Park. The existing path system at Family Park is minimal, linking Carmel Drive to the athletic courts. And although a spur was installed to provide an accessible pathway to the playground, the other existing path was not resurfaced as part of recreating recreation, but as you can see now, is now overdue for completion. With more people coming to the park to view one of the newest pieces of public art in honor of fallen Officer Sawyers, as well as increased use after our other park renovations, this will be a welcome improvement to the park. In addition, this project will include extending the path to the baseball fields, creating an accessible pathway and viewing area for spectators, something that has been missing for decades at this facility. At Moravian Park, the proposed budget includes an allocation of funds to install a hard-surfaced connection path from Maizano Drive so that neighbors to the south of the park can have an accessible route to this neighborhood gem. This connection will save residents from having to unnecessarily traverse through the sub for close to a mile to catch the main park entrance. With this project, the Parks and Recreation Department, along with the City Attorney's Office, will be working with DTE Energy on an agreement in an attempt to make this connection a reality. As a brief history, we did install a short spur to the edge of the park's property line when redoing the trail a few years back, as we were preparing for this project to come forward. And we do look forward to providing a more formal option to those that need it. As you can see in the photo, you can see where our asphalt path stops and where the current man-made foot trail picks up. You can also see that people do use this route, as this was not a staged photo either, so timing was good. While maintaining existing pathways and amenities is a necessary function of our department and is something that should be noted, I am pleased to also highlight the enhancement of our non-motorized trail network through the installation of new facilities as well. In October of 2022, the city and county cut the ribbon on our newest non-motorized trail along the Sterling Relief Drain from Shaner to Metropolitan Parkway behind Freedom Hill. Undoubtedly, we have some punch list items to complete on the trail, but I can confidently call this addition a true success. If you have not yet been on this section of the trail, this great collaboration offers our residents the ability to enjoy a scenic 1-mile section of path right in the heart of the city. Trail users can enjoy the water flowing through the drain, as well as spotting wildlife such as birds, deer, butterflies, and a variety of other animals and insects that make up the local ecosystem. In an effort to continue the success of this trail addition, the city is currently working with Macomb County and planning a section on the west side of the city, which would run east from the north of Nelson Park across to Ryan Road. This approximately 3/4 mile section of soft surface trail would traverse through a newly established prairie and provide a unique recreational experience that you normally would not get to enjoy in a built-out city like Sterling Heights. This project is still in the planning phases and is part of a grant submission by the county, so I do want to stress that it's not part of the proposed budget. It is nonetheless a great potential collaborative effort that is something to look forward to and would come before council at a later time to consider costs and the feasibility of connecting the greater network of drain trails running east and west through the city. Other exciting trail projects currently in the planning phase are the ITC Corridor Trail from Clinton River Road to M59, as well as the Dobry Road Shared Use Trail, which I will briefly highlight in that order. Part of the city's strategic plan to utilize ARPA funds, the ITC Corridor Trail will connect two major community focal points, the Clinton River Trail System and the Lakeside Mall Corridor, once brought to fruition. Upon completion, this connected trail will provide almost 10 miles of non-motorized opportunities away from major roads, which does not even include connections to other areas within the city or the continuation of trails in adjoining municipalities. With funding already in place through our ARPA plan, city departments are working with ITC to finalize a location and concept plan that will incorporate safe use of the trail away from the transmission towers. Once approved, the goal will be to have the trail amenity installed during the upcoming fiscal year with a full set of specifications, site plan, and recommended bid award coming before council prior to the start of that project. Likewise, the Dobry Road Shared Use Trail will be brought in front of council likely at the end of the 2023 calendar year or shortly after, with an agreement for consideration as part of the Transportation Alternatives Program grant that the city is receiving. The 2.6 mile path from DeQuinder to Utica Road is a collaborative effort between the cities of Sterling Heights and Utica, provides walkability in a section of the city that previously was lacking, and especially along a major corridor, and provides a connection point to the Iron Belt Trail route that traverses through the city. Diving more into the Iron Belt Trail, for those that may not be familiar, there are two trail routes showcasing municipalities from the Detroit River all the way to the UP, with the biking route going directly through Sterling Heights. That is shown in red on the map that you're seeing there. To date, the majority of our section is complete as it runs through the Clinton River Trail, but we do lack some connectivity from 14 Mile up to 16 Mile, as shown on the map. This map is taken right from the Iron Belt Trail website and shows the original planned trail, which brings users up Shaner Road to catch the Freedom Trail at 16 Mile, and then brings people into the Clinton River Trail. Our updated goal, however, is to defer from this original route and bring the trail through the ITC corridor from Warren and up through Baumgartner Park, staying away from major roads through our section. Ultimately, we would then connect to the enhanced pathways along Dodge Park Road, leading into the city center complex and connecting to the Clinton River Trail in Dodge Park. As we wrap up plans for the northern section of the ITC corridor, we hope to use that success as a springboard to get approvals for the southern section, and from there, very confident in working with our partnering entities to access grant funds to offset the cost to build this trail. In the meantime, we're working on a more temporary connection point along Maple Lane Road, where our engineering department is looking at our road projects there that would bring people up Maple Lane, across 15 Mile Road, and back up to Dodge Park Road, again bringing people into the Clinton River Trail system. Shifting focus away from the trails, I'd like to highlight a few other park improvement projects that are included in this year's proposed budget, showing that the work done with recreating recreation was not the end of our park investment, rather just the beginning. The first project that will come to completion is the cricket field at Delia Park. This project has been closed for a couple of years now, but has failed to reach completion for a variety of reasons. Final allocation today, as provided in the proposed budget, will result in the completion of the remaining two items necessary for play to begin on that field, which is the concrete pour for the bowling lane, as well as the turf that is installed on top of the concrete. A second project to highlight will be the resurfacing of the pickleball at Magnolia Park. This project was not included in recreating recreation because it had recently been done prior to that needs assessment, but has since deteriorated to the point of requiring attention. You may remember that we have done the basketball court and tennis court over the last couple of years, and the pickleball court would be the final piece to this park improvement. While the previous two courts were resurfaced with sport court tiles, we plan to resurface the pickleball court with the more traditional athletic court hard surface, which is preferred by our pickleball players. In addition, our design team will be looking at the feasibility of reconfiguring the space to include a second court in an effort to keep up with the growing trend of pickleball and the demand for facilities throughout the city. And finally, the proposed budget includes replacing the field lighting on the mini soccer field in Dodge Park. Since opening in June of 2018, a number of fixtures have ceased working on both the soccer field and the basketball court. And as we've attempted to repair or replace those fixtures, we've since found out that the manufacturer is no longer in business. In turn, we had to look at a different solution. We will plan to replace those lights on the soccer field using a Musco lighting system, which you may remember are the same lights that we have at Delia, Baumgartner, and Donovan Parks for our baseball fields, and also at Delia Park on the tennis courts. This tried and true system comes with a 10-year warranty and a control system that automatically adjusts with the natural changes of daylight hours, allows us the ability to adjust schedules electronically via cell phone or computer so that we don't have to dispatch a park maintenance employee to the park to make any adjustments. In an effort to gain as much longevity as possible from the initial fixtures, we will be utilizing the still functioning fixtures from the soccer field as replacements on the basketball court until we run out. At that time, we will come back to City Council with a capital purchase for consideration to retrofit the basketball court, which is hopefully not for another 10+ years. Lastly today, I would like to provide a brief update on the status of acquiring property for a park and a secondary indoor community space in the southern section of the city. Due to Warren Consolidated Schools' desire to repurpose Fillmore Elementary for district-related activities, city administration is now in the process of reevaluating available options in an effort to achieve the desired outcome of expanding our reach to additional areas in the city. While the initial plan to acquire the city property did not pan out, city administration remains focused on making sure that the $1 million state appropriation supported by Representative Shannon does not go to waste. In turn, we are continuing conversation with the district in regards to any available options for green space or buildings, which does still include conversation about Fillmore. We are meeting with private entities to explore public-private opportunities, and are even looking at non-traditional spaces within our target area. As we work through these options, the department will be sure to present more information for council to consider and discuss. In closing, I thank you for the opportunity to share plans on how fiscal year 2023 and 2024 is set to be another productive year for improving quality of life in Sterling Heights. Between the enhancements to the parks and the programmatic service improvements included in the proposed budget, the Parks and Recreation Department is positioned to continue our efforts of bringing the community together through our work, which is a job we take very seriously. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding these topics from my presentation or any others related to the Parks and Recreation Department. Thank you.
And Mayor and Council, you can see once again, as was the case with the first budget hearing, the common theme tonight is continuous improvement with all of our departments. And moving on now, Sterling Heights is continuing to experience unprecedented growth in housing, commercial, and high-tech manufacturing. We see that going on every day, every week, all across the city. Excuse me, Cranes Detroit recently listed Sterling Heights as a hot market to watch in 2023. Defense companies like Rheinmetall has opened, and just a few years ago, they started with a couple of employees. They now employ over 100 high-tech engineering jobs, and they've made millions of dollars to the building that they moved into recently. So examples of where businesses want to locate in Sterling Heights, they start up, and then they expand and grow in other facilities across the city. We've had numerous restaurants that have opened over the past year and more to come, including McAllister's. And in addition, numerous hotels continue to open in Sterling Heights, especially along the Van Dyke corridor, to accommodate the growing employment base in Sterling Heights as well. And largely, that's all related to business travel demands. The development of the city and strong economic development plans have occurred in large part because of strong master plans. And as council knows, we have the need to update our existing master plan. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that and other exciting projects across the city. So our city development manager and assistant city planner Jake Parcell, along with planner Alexis Richards, will discuss these exciting plans at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, Mayor Taylor, members of council, members of city staff. A hot market indeed. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to discuss our master land use plan, how we can kind of harness everything that Mr. Vanderpool was discussing and help move the city forward and continue down this path of being an attractive business and residential location. So first and foremost, to set the stage for our question, we have to ask, what is a master land use plan? It's something, while you inherently may not know the ins and outs of every page of it, is something you're all familiar with. It's in our PowerPoints when we present to you some of our large development projects at council meetings. It's something that ties together all key elements of the community, from transportation, infrastructure, natural resources, and more. Our master land use plan is the visioning document that the planning office goes off of when we set our long-range goals and evaluate our development projects for the next 10 to 20 years. However, at this point in time, the Sterling Heights Master Land Use Plan is up for renewal. So per statute with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, every 5 years, the Master Land Use Plan must be reviewed by the Planning Commission to determine an appropriate course of action, whether it be amending, adopting a new, or staying put. The Planning Commission adopted the last master plan in 2017. Since then, a lot has changed that we'll touch on throughout this presentation. So at the December meeting and staff's due diligence, we took a breakdown of the master plan to Planning Commission for a review, where they determined that a rewrite of the master land use plan be recommended to help continue streamlining development in the community. Then at the April meeting, Planning Commission moved forward with a motion to make it official, indicating staff and the city's intent to plan, noticing nearby communities for when we're ready to engage our master plan and move forward with this process. So to set the stage for where we're at, as the current master land use plan dictates, the 2017 master land use plan introduced the planning framework that we're working off of currently. This includes areas such as the Van Dyke Mixed Use Overlay District, mixed use development nodes speckled throughout the city in purple there, and then the light purple North Van Dyke Avenue and the kind of crosshatched red in the upper right corner for the Lakeside Circle. These ideas were relatively new and young and lightly referenced here at the beginning of the 2017 master plan, in particular Lakeside. So when we see development that's been happening throughout the city, we like to see these as targeted areas that we're focusing on. However, there's some difficulty in evaluating the projects in terms of how they're codified in our zoning ordinance and finding space to develop them since Sterling Heights is nearly a completely developed city. So the work that's been happening in the planning department for the past 5+ years has been creative and beneficial for the community, but we're looking at moving this forward and kind of streamlining the process to update this, identify new areas to accomplish quality development, and new areas to kind of focus on helping developers make Sterling Heights an attractive place to come. But before we get into moving forward on the current need for an update of the master land use plan, I'd like to pass it over to Ms. Richards to discuss some of the creative ways that we're seeing development done in the city right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Parcell. So I'm now going to do an overview of some projects that exemplify some of the best practices that we would like to see codified in our new master plan. So first, we have a residential development that will be located on Utica Road in the North Van Dyke Avenue district. The Flats is a planned unit development, and through this special development option, we were able to reduce parking, increase density, and increase the amount of activated green space. And these modifications allow for better development and bring the site into alignment with the North Van Dyke Avenue plan. A component of the new master plan would address the need for innovative projects such as this and identify ways to streamline or simplify the development process so that special development options are not as necessary. Next is another residential development located on Shaner near Lakeside Circle. Also a PUD, Sterling Center Apartments is an example of how we can activate excessive parking that is underutilized. When presenting to council in the past, members have expressed the need to address the issue of excessive parking in the city, and developments like this are one such way that we can do that. Next, we have an example of adaptive reuse. As a city that is majorly built out, we must start looking at how we can adapt existing buildings to meet current and future needs. For a number of years, the corner of Van Dyke and 15 had been vacant and dilapidated. However, that is changing. Being located in the Van Dyke Mixed-Use District, there is an increased opportunity and need for transformative development. This multi-stakeholder redevelopment is also an example of horizontal mixed use, as it contains a residential, hotel, and commercial component. Further, this multi-layered project demonstrates how the city can facilitate larger projects across multiple parcels with different owners. And throughout the master plan process, we can identify areas where multi-stakeholder redevelopment would be beneficial as opposed to a more piecemeal process. And then lastly, as we work to improve vibrancy and utilize creative solutions to attract new businesses, we wanted to highlight some examples where opportunity was found in the outlots of existing businesses. On the left side of the screen, we have an image of an outlot in Lakeside Circle that was once occupied by a single building, now contains 2 buildings on site with the potential for a third. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is a site on Van Dyke where restaurant use is now located in front of a medical use. And through the master plan process, we would identify other outlots strategically placed throughout the city for redevelopment. As I mentioned previously, we are a primarily built-out city, and so identifying areas with underutilized land use will be key for us moving forward. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to Dr. Purcell to take us into the future.
Thank you. So, looking to the future, what we want or what we're striving for with the newly adopted master land use plan. Essentially, we're looking at setting the stage for guiding development for years to come in the future. We're envisioning the new master land use plan is something that will require minimal updates in the next 5-year cycle and moving forward from there. A lot has happened in the past 5 years that we'll get into a little bit in this section, and there's a lot of areas in the city that need to be focused on. But what Ms. Richards kind of centered on in her part of the presentation is efficiency, innovation, and finding ways to bring this quality development here. When we review projects here, we want to make sure that they're taking the land in the city to the highest and best use. That has taken a lot of creativity, a lot of working with developers, and as she mentioned, a lot of special development options that require a lot of modifications to our zoning ordinance. So what we're looking for as we move forward is integration, not only with members of the community, business owners, and the public, but with city departments and developers to put them in the right position to be successful in Sterling Heights. Also, how to streamline our development process and how to continue moving the city forward, make it an attractive place for people to, live, work, and play. And additionally, this is going to position staff to begin revisions on the zoning ordinance. We've had a lot of discussion with council about parking, about bringing in some more teeth to our mixed-use development districts to make evaluation of these projects easier and more simple, not just for us to evaluate, but for developers to digest as well. And our hope is in all of these presentations, I've already been in front of you for the last 5 months about these zoning ordinance changes. The next step of our planning process is to incorporate them all into one that's in line with the master plan. So when we look forward to the future with our new master plan, here's some of the items that we want to focus on. First and foremost is the lakeside redevelopment. This memorandum of understanding was adopted in November. One of the more transformative projects in the region that is taking hands-on, constant focus from members of engineering, planning, city development, economic development, and more. One of the more large, noteworthy projects that's going to be coming to the city moving forward. Something that has apartments, retail, restaurants, and more that's very loosely mentioned in the existing master land use plan, and something that needs a great deal of focus on it. This is a substantial, large project that is taking so much time from city staff and so much work that we want to put the visioning statement for here into, writing so we can move forward on it in a consistent way with our PUD agreement that we're going to be adopting. Additionally, in the past 2 years, there's been a North Van Dyke Avenue master plan that's been adopted. This is a sub-area plan that takes place in the northern portion of the city. Something that the city really wants to focus on, creative, new placemaking development in this area. We've seen one really, I believe, high-quality development come in here, which is the Flats on Utica. And to continue that, we'd like to envelope this sub-area plan into the new master land use plan, making sure that everything's on the same page, eliminating any conflicting things between the plans, setting up the boundaries, and then begin to codify this into the zoning ordinance as well to help us with the evaluation of these projects from a land use perspective. Additionally, in 2021, the city of Sterling Heights had an award-winning sustainability plan from the Office of Planning. This is something that also envelopes a lot of different city departments, something that the Parks Department discussed, sustainable mobility through our trail system has been discussed in here. Something that will be included in the master land use plan as well is natural assets. Something that city administration has placed a huge emphasis on is looking at drainage, runoff, increasing our landscaping, and really working hard to improve our tree coverage throughout the city as well. And these are things that we can incorporate in our master land use plan to help shape development moving forward. You'll see here the area on the left is all red. That's, areas with the least amount of tree coverage in the city. Our tree canopy is low for Macomb County. Something that we want to pride ourselves on is having a sustainable, green, vibrant community that we want people to be a part of. And this will go a long way when it's enveloped into a larger visioning statement. And then finally, some special considerations for you that were added on from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission had several hours of just wonderful discussion about this, but things to be emphasized to look at this is targeted redevelopment when we look at the city. As we mentioned, time in and time out in this presentation, we're a completely developed city, but some of it's not efficient anymore. There's buildings that need to be reused in creative ways. There's parking lots that are large, that front some of our major corridors that are not necessarily inviting. So finding creative redevelopment here is a way to kind of help use the master land use plan to leverage us moving forward, to find these quality developments within the city where there are existing opportunities. Additionally, as Mr. Vanderpool stated, there's areas in the city where people are going to want to be moving. So housing is a huge consideration that we'll have to be making moving forward. Sterling Heights is a large city, but there's a lot of people who want to live here and make this place their home, as many as you have. So looking at new different housing types, ways to bring in more people and make it attractive for people to live in the city is going to be incredibly important. And then also including climate considerations that relate to the sustainability plan will be important for the new master plan as well. And then finally, something that we've all seen at public meetings is, nature of the beast. We have community participation. That's a huge part of what we do. Unfortunately, something that happens is there's a lack of understanding sometimes because of the technical jargon that's used in our staff reports and some of the large projects that may make people, concerned about what's happening in the city. Something that we're really excited about looking at the master land use plan is an opportunity to educate on what we're doing and forming our development options on what the city wants to be doing moving forward. So we've outlined here 3 strategies that staff has begun to workshop to include as many people in the city moving forward as we can to help make this a very inclusive process. So first and foremost, we'd be working potentially with consultant teams and staff ourselves to create community engagement sessions where we can bring people in, describe where these developments will be targeted, what they want to see in their neighborhoods and what they want to see in the city overall, and then shape the master land use plan as a community envisioned plan. Strategy 2, this is what happened in 2017 and something that I believe can be even more effective now, is using an online portal to gather feedback from community members, but not just residents, also business owners and developers who own these plazas along our major thoroughfares and who have a great business need in the community that, needs something to help guide them further as we move forward this redevelopment phase. And then finally, we'd like to create a steering committee with staff. This is going to be something that includes people from every department in the city. We'd like to provide updates to Planning Commission, Sustainability Commission, and City Council regularly of the status of the master land use plan and make sure that it's an open and informative process as we move forward. So, in conclusion, the top line says it all. Good planning creates communities that offer better choices for where and how people live. What we're looking for is making development easier in the city, helping with evaluating our projects at the Planning Commission and Council level, and then aligning the city's vision with what the people of Sterling Heights want and what staff can help or enable staff to do the best we can to move us forward. This is going to be kickstarting the process of a long-term planning vision with the city. Incorporating all of our sub-area plans into the master land use plan will lead to us codifying this in the zoning ordinance, eliminating these kind of spot ordinance changes that we have here, and bringing everyone to one level page for, moving the city forward in a very grassroots, community-oriented manner. And with that, we'll be open for questions after the presentations, and we thank you for your time.
And Mayor and Council, I hope you all find this as exciting as we do. This is something we enjoy working on, and master planning for the future is so important. Now, something that is near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is road construction. We want to spend a few minutes talking about the many road projects that we have planned for the upcoming year. I think almost everyone would agree that the city has been on the leading edge of road construction over the last 8 years or so. It's been quite impressive. We've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, some of which has included other revenue sources beyond the city that the city of Sterling Heights has led in obtaining those funds. So our city engineer, Brent Bayshaw, is now going to lead us through all the road projects we have planned this upcoming year.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Petrosak, and good evening. Yep, 2023 will be another busy road construction season highlighted by 9 major road projects as well as significant work on our local road system. In this presentation, I'll highlight those projects, some of which are already underway. So let's begin with the Innovate Mountain project. First and foremost, I'm happy to announce that the Innovate Mountain project is on schedule. The paving from north of 15 Mile Road to M59 was completed in 2022. And in 2023, the south portion of the job will see the underground utility installation and roadway paving completed to the southerly limits of I-696. The north half of the project will see work in 2023 as well. The new LED street lighting will be completed, much of which is already done. The new signalization will be completed as well as with utility pole relocations, which those will enable the completion of the new sidewalk and pathways. Additionally, this fall, the north part of the job will be landscaped, including an entrance signage in the median on the north part of the job. And the uplit artistic features and the completion of bioswales. I'd like to take a minute to highlight the bioswales as it fits into the state-of-the-art stormwater management procedure and also falls under the umbrella of the sustainability goals of the city. The innovation of Mound Road also includes the innovation of stormwater management. The depressions in the median that can be seen on site now will be the home of 9 bioswales designed within the Innovate Mound project. These bioswales contain plants, grasses, and trees that thrive in wet condition. These bioswales provide three functions essentially. They'll improve the water quality by plants designed to filter contaminants out of the roadway drainage that enter these bioswales. They'll also provide water volume control by limiting the amount of water being sent to the area drains by providing for infiltration into the ground. Lastly, the rate at which the water will enter the drains will be controlled, lessening the effects of drainage systems during heavy rain events. The second project of the year is already complete, actually, and it's although a relatively low investment, the new traffic signals provided at Dobry and Ryan Road provide a left turn phase for vehicles now turning left from Dobry onto Ryan Road. Now, this much needed investment improves the road capacity of Dobry Drive. As often, and probably some of you have experienced this, the queues of the left turns would back up into Dobry Drive and stop the flow of the through lanes. The city has a complete streets policy that ensures we look at the roadways as just not a place for motor vehicles. Public road reconstruction is designed under this complete streets vision. This project, which is already under construction, includes 2.3 miles of new asphalt surface from Van Dyke to Utica Road. The project is unique in that it will contain bike lanes between 17 Mile Road and Utica Road. These bike lanes will tie nicely into the pathways on Dodge Park Road and Shana Road, both of which are used by bicyclists. The project will also modernize the traffic signals at 17 Mile Road and Dodge Park. The new signals will match the mast arm signalization existing on Dodge Park Road. As part of the project, sidewalk gaps will be filled at key locations, including, but not limited to, these locations on the south side of the road between Van Dyke and 17 Mile Road. The project will also include numerous tree plantings along the entire stretch of roadway. And lastly, safety improvements will be made, including the realignment at Plumbuck Road and Utica Road intersection. The roadway will now come in at a 90-degree angle to provide better lines of sight for drivers and also reduce the roadway crossing length for pedestrians and the new sidewalk that's to be installed at that intersection as well. A well-needed project will begin this spring to resurface almost 2 miles of 14-mile road from Hayes to the west of Maple Lane Road. This project will entail placing new concrete curb and gutter and a new asphalt surface. Another project that is anticipated to begin next week is the resurfacing of Shana Road from south of Canal to M59. This project completes a multi-year resurfacing plan addressing Shana Road from 15-mile road to the northerly city limits. The project will entail new concrete curb and gutter and new asphalt surface. Last year, Metro Parkway was resurfaced from DeQuinder Road past Ryan Road. In 2023, the resurfacing of Metro Parkway will continue, tying into the limits of the 22 project on the west end, and on the east end, it will tie into the Innovate Mound improvements. This project is anticipated for a summer start, with work progressing into the fall. Ryan Road will be resurfaced in 2023 from Metro Parkway to 18-mile road. And this federally funded 2-mile long project will provide new asphalt surface and improve the rideability of the roadway. The existing concrete will be milled down, base repairs made prior to the new asphalt surface. Deteriorating curbs will be replaced as well. And this project is a late summer, early fall start and will be completed this construction season. On Metro Parkway, we'll have concrete repairs performed between Dodge Park Road and Shana Road. These repairs will supplement the repairs that were made last year as part of the project from Van Dyke to Dodge Park Road. There was extra funding that they were able to extend and do the concrete repairs to Shana. So this project will clean up this stretch of roadway. Once 14-mile road is complete, the asphalt portion of Maple Lane will be addressed. The existing asphalt will be pulverized and reshaped for new asphalt pavement. This will be a fall project to not interfere with the detour routes and the traffic control for the 14-mile road project in the area. Aside from the construction project in 2023, the city will be busy planning for the future. There are 2 grant-funded studies that will be occurring. The first is a collaboration with Macomb County Department of Roads to study Metro Parkway between Mound and Van Dyke. This study will lead the way for future project and funding opportunities. The roadway has significant infrastructure assets, including the above-grade rail crossing. We know the bridge needs work upcoming, as does the roadway, so studying this section of roadway now is appropriate. So questions will be explored, such as what safety improvements can be made, what can be done with the barrier wall, what geometric improvements can be made. Is a road diet in order, or lane reallocations, what non-motorized transportation improvements can be made, what branding efforts can be made, what aesthetic improvements can be made. Those are just some of the questions that will look to be answered as we study this section of roadway, and be on the lookout for public involvement meetings as well. The second study is a Safe Streets for All study that has 2 primary elements. The first element is looking at ideas to implement traffic calming on both major roads and local roads in the city. And the second element is to look at Ryan Road through the entire city limits. With Mound Road nearing completion and DeQuinder Road completed, both have drastically increased their vehicular capacity. Now is the appropriate time to look at how can Ryan Road be reimagined. So this rendering is just an example of what could be reimagined. The study will be exhaustive. We'll look at focusing on safety improvements. That could also include medians, roundabouts, road diet, lane reallocations, and non-motorized improvements, just to touch on a few of the items. Moving on to local roads, 2023 will see a large investment in that network as well. 17 local roads will be fully reconstructed, totaling 2.85 miles. Roads such as Lamparter Drive shown here will receive a complete reconstruction with a new subbase and underdrain. And the sectional road program will also provide large repairs to 16 local city roads. A total of 2.1 miles of roadways will be replaced full width in 2023 with this program. So in total, 9 major city road projects will be constructed in 2023. 33 local road projects will be constructed in 2023, with a total investment in our roadway system in 2023 of $71.3 million. And taking a look back, starting in 2014, with the reconstruction of Van Dyke Avenue and including projects in 2023, the city has invested over $500 million into this roadway network over this 10-year period that touched the vast majority of city major roads in the city. I'd like to now take a quick look ahead, as many exciting projects are on the horizon as well as included in this budget. 2024 will see the resurfacing of Moravian Drive. One of the project goals is to extend this project into Clinton Township and include them and create ideal project limits for the resurfacing. The 17-mile road bridge will have its superstructure reconstructed in 2023. This is the last of the city vehicular bridges that are in poor condition. An MDOT project on M53 will occur to address all the bridges on M53 while resurfacing the roadway. A few exciting parts of this project include creating a pedestrian route along Clinton River Road over M53 and tying into the sidewalk at Henry Ford High School and at 19 Mile Road. For the first time in city history, all types of users will be able to traverse Clinton River Road over M53. Another exciting improvement is the completion of the sidewalk along M59 at M53. This connection will tie into the sidewalk built with the M59 project planned in 2018 and create a fully walkable and rideable golden corridor for the first time in city history as well. Lastly, the city applied for funds for a transformative project on Clinton River Road. And hopeful, sorry about that. Let me go backwards. And hopeful for funding, hopeful for a project in 2024 to tie into the numerous parks, pathways, and the Clinton River adjacent to the stretch of roadway. So stay tuned for the results of that funding. I'll now briefly go over the remaining 3 years of the 5-year plan, 2025 through 2027. 2025 includes a federally funded resurfacing project on 17 Mile Road from Mound to Van Dyke. 14 Mile Road is a federally funded resurfacing project from Van Dyke to Maple Lane. And 18 Mile Road, a project from near DPW extending to Utica Road. Dobry resurfacing east of Ryan Road and a bridge rehab on Hayes Road over the Clinton River is scheduled for 2025. 2026 will include a federally funded project to resurface 15 Mile Road from Mound Road to Maple Lane Road and a project to address Shoreline Drive near Lakeside. 2027 includes funds allocated to resurface Dobry Road from DeQuinder to Ryan, also Clinton River Road from Hayes to Shaner, if not before, and Utica Road from Van Dyke to 19.5 Mile Road and Maple Lane reconstruction. I'd like to conclude this presentation with stating with such a busy 2023 construction year, communication will be the key to having successful construction projects. Please visit our Cone Zone for the latest construction updates, and you can also sign up for text notifications at this site or use this QR code shown. Thank you for your time. I'll be available for questions.
And so, Mayor, you can see we have a lot programmed for road work coming up, and much more over the ensuing years. We saved our Department of the Year award honoree for the last presentation this evening. And so our DPW Director, Mike Moore, will now talk about many projects going on in the Department of Public Works and the good work of all the people there who, as I mentioned during the award ceremony, not only work around the clock throughout the year, but also under some really harsh conditions, depending on whether or not it's underground work or, you know, in the middle of snowstorms and blizzards and storm damage that occurs throughout the spring and summer and so on. They do great work. So I'd now like to introduce our DPW Director, Mike Moore.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Vanderpool, and the kind words for the department, truly spoken words, so thank you. And good evening, everybody, City Council, City Attorney, and residents and colleagues that are here this evening. So I'm excited to tonight present the upcoming budget for the Department of Public Works, and thought that it would be best if I started with exciting news that recently we had a nationally renowned fleet consultant visit the Department of Public Works and gave us some recommendations on how we can better maintain the city vehicle fleet. And one of the biggest recommendations that he had was to create a fleet steering committee. So what we've done is create a committee of myself, the fleet supervisor, and a representative from the fire department, police department, and finance department to tackle many different objectives this upcoming year as it relates to vehicles and funding for vehicles. So some of the topics that we have before us for this upcoming year, one of them will be a new software program that we have we have proposed funding for that would help us with a litany of different things as far as the vehicle fleet. A new software would provide us the ability to better track vehicles and provide a preventative maintenance schedule to help keep repair costs down and avoid extended downtime, improve operational efficiency, improve customer service with better communication with drivers on scheduled repairs, loaners, and lastly, the ability to integrate modern technology. So our group will look at that as a whole. We'll also look at ways to continue to reduce the fleet. That's what the picture in the upper right-hand corner represents, the vehicle fleet. We've done a good job, but I think there's always extra room that we can continue to remove cars from the fleet. The fire department is looking at a fast response unit, so we want to assist them in identifying something that can help them meet their needs. And then, of course, we're always looking at how best to appropriate the funds that we have and spend our money wisely so we can maintain the fleet and look to purchase as many new capital vehicles as possible. Some of our colleagues here tonight have undergone a electric vehicle study. And what they've identified is different locations throughout the city where electrical vehicle charging stations can be. Where this committee comes into play is we won't so much look at where the locations of the charging stations will be. However, we will look at electric vehicles for the city fleet. So some very exciting news. It's still in its infancy right now, but this committee that I mentioned, including an intern that should arrive to the Department of Public Works this summer, that intern's main goal will be to investigate and research into electric vehicles and how other large communities are using them. So we're really looking forward to the potential purchase of some electric vehicles for the city that we can determine what departments would best utilize that and get a lot of feedback for future purchases. So if we switch gears quite a bit, I'd like to talk about the underground infrastructure, which, as the city manager mentioned, that's what is a very difficult part of a career within our industry at Public Works. And the reason I say that is because it's often that there's failures in any city, in any country, of major utilities. And typically what happens when you show up to the scene is you need to begin excavating, and there's a myriad of different pipes, as you can see, for example, in this picture, that during your excavation, you're trying to avoid and find the root cause of what the concern is. So this upcoming year, the Office of Engineering, it will conduct a study to review the existing underground infrastructure and create a capital improvement plan for water and sewer. So I thought it'd be helpful to provide a little bit of backup tonight on why that study is so important. So if I jump into our water assets, on the left you'll see our lineal feet of water main and when it was installed. So you can see water main installed in the 50s. We're looking at 137,000 lineal feet of water main. So that's potentially pipe that's 50 to 60 to 70 years old, from 700,000 lineal feet installed in the 60s. So I'll get into this more in the presentation, but there's many different topics that when the department responds to emergencies, we have to take into consideration. One being the age of the infrastructure. If we look over to the right-hand side, we see that the Department of Public Works maintains 7,100 gate valves, at the bottom 7,500 hydrants. So every year we do budget and we do maintain and I shouldn't say maintain, we do repair 500 of the 7,000 gate valves every year, and we've been making quite a dent in those repairs. And as far as the hydrants go, every hydrant in the entire city is touched one time per year as far as being painted, but they're also winterized every season. So let's walk through a typical water main break for the Department of Public Works. We get a call, could be any hour of the day, could be any day of the week while we're eating dinner. Staff stops what they're doing, they come out to the scene, they see this picture here, and they immediately need to pull out their prints. So hypothetically, let's just assume the area highlighted in green is where the water main break is, 14170 Bangor. So we look at our prints as you see on the screen, and a lot of this is with the help of our IT department and the engineering department inputting all this data. So we look at the prints on the screen, we need to isolate this water main break and make the repair. What you can't see on the screen, I'll move over to the next screen, is where the gate valves I mentioned are. If we go back, you can't see them on the screen. However, they're here. So to isolate this water main break, at the top left of the screen at 14208 drum right, we'd want to close that valve. All the way down at the bottom left of the screen on 40350 Remsen, we would close that valve. And then just to the right, 14239 Bangor, we'd close that valve. Sounds great. Perfect scenario. That sounds great. However, that sometimes is not real life. Typically what has to happen is that middle valve won't close. So we have to move all the way to the east over towards Saul on 14379 Bangor and close that valve. That's more of a realistic scenario for our staff. Therefore, by moving to the east, now you can see there's another 20 homes that now will be without water during this repair. So those are the items that we're aggressively attacking annually, trying to make those repairs so we limit the amount of residents who are disrupted by the water main break. This isn't our photo, this is a stock photo, but this is a typical job site for a water main break, sanitary or storm repair. A lot of moving parts. You really need to have your eyes open and use your ears in scenarios like this. A lot of room for error and a lot of room for needing to be on your toes, if you will. So we talked about the age of the different infrastructure. This is just another example of the responsibility of staff at the department, that there isn't just the age to be concerned about when we hear of a break or a call. It's also the size of the pipe. So why do I want to bring up the size of the pipe? Because our department has to make sure that we're ready, willing, and able to repair all those different sizes of pipes. So we get the phone call and we don't know what size of pipe, where it's at, where it's located. We show up on site, we get our prints, we start to excavate, and I can almost guarantee you we have the right repair parts, but it depends, are they on the truck or back at the shop? So a lot of moving pieces to make sure this underground infrastructure runs smoothly and folks don't notice any change about their day. And then lastly, with the numbers, we look on the left-hand side, many lineal feet on the storm side. So we talked about the age of some of the pipe, the different size, diameter of some of the pipe, but then we also need to contend with the different material of the pipe. So it could be cement, cast iron, steel, many different variables for the department when they show up to the job site. So it keeps us moving, keeps us sharp. So with all that pipe talk, fun question of the day. What does Sterling Heights have in common with Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, Mexico City, Los Angeles, or San Francisco? Anybody? Crickets. Okay. What we have in common individually with each one of those cities or countries is if you were to stack all that pipe in a line flat, it would reach 1,900 miles as the responsibility of the Department of Public Works. So if you extend that out as the crow flies, we could make it to Puerto Rico, Nicaragua, Mexico City, Los Angeles, or San Francisco. So a pretty vast network of pipe, if you will. Okay.
Nothing good up north?
We could go north, yeah.
Montreal, maybe?
Okay, so that's enough about pipe. How about some structures? We all know the dreaded catch basins and other handful of failing structures in the city. There's tens of thousands of them, but the folks at the department do a fantastic job at repairing hundreds of them every single season. Here's some before pictures. We've seen them. And here's some of the good press. And boy, we sure do hear about the good stuff after we fix a lot of these two residents. And we appreciate that positive feedback. When they see those projects completed, they're very appreciative of the work that the department does. Okay, so enough about pipes and enough about brakes. Let's talk about something else that we also do, which is more of a maintenance side of things. So it's common, and I'm sure a lot of folks watching or folks in this room have heard of a flooded street or a plugged up sanitary lead. Well, that's because one example would be either grease or roots that have infiltrated the pipe. So the department has 3 high-pressure jet trucks that have a couple thousand gallons of water on their trucks and high-pressure jet nozzles. And what we do is we will drop a nozzle and a hose into the line, as you see here, and we will clean out these underground pipes. So instead of making an excavation, we'll use high-pressure water. The top left picture is a nozzle that has high-pressure water going forward to punch a hole through tree roots or grease so that sanitary or storm can flow. The bottom right corner is more of a cleaning head, which is solely used to clean the inside circumference of the pipe. So I have a quick video here. And what you can see here, not only from the video, is the pipe and the sanitary flowing, but that's a problem right there. That is H2S damage from the sanitary gases in the pipe, and you can see the steel on the inside of that pipe. So we've recognized that that is a critical repair, and we have a couple of those that we're working on. Many have already been completed throughout the city. We'll just move forward quickly here, and you can see further damage. Same pipe system. So a handful of these have already been repaired. I'll get into our repair method here shortly. And then lastly, another great purpose of not just the cleaning but the televising, as you see here, is we took a complaint of a sunken structure. We dropped the camera in the sanitary, which you see in front is the high pressure jet creating a vacuum underground, pulling the water so we can see. Oh, and you can see my mouse. Great. So what you see right here is this structure has actually dropped. So the complaint that came in was there was a sunken structure. We dropped the camera down, and by golly, there's your sunken structure. So another critical repair that the department has on the top of our list to take care of. So I mentioned that we do different repairs. Some are full excavations. They take up a lot of time. They're cumbersome. Before I get too deep into that, other methods that we use is solely just pipelining. And to keep that simple, the picture on the left would be tree roots infiltration, some crack pipe, and the method we use versus the full excavation and the disruption is we can line pipes, and we've done a good job over the years identifying pipes that can be repaired using a liner, and that's simply just essentially pulling a flexible liner through the existing pipe. It's pressurized with water, hot water. That pipe adheres to the existing pipe and essentially is a brand new pipe with no excavation needed. So trenchless technology that we've been using over the years, it's worked very well. A couple years ago, we had our storm and wastewater asset management grant, and that's where we got a lot of that televising and a lot of that cleaning. And what you see before you now is all the major city sanitary pipe larger than 24-inch, and everything in red has since been completing. So hundreds of thousands of feet that we've successfully cleaned and televised. Everything remaining in black on the major roads. Will come before council, in fact, shortly, as every year we do budget $500,000 to do the cleaning and televising. We have a new contract coming up, so soon you will see that. So we've been busy with all the underground stuff. It keeps us busy, but we're looking forward to continuing to maintain the city and keep the residents not knowing that we're behind the scenes doing the job. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate everybody's support for the Department of Public Works, and I do truly and humbly appreciate those kind words about the Department of the Year. It means a lot to the team there, so I thank you, and I look forward to questions.
And Mayor, you can see the scope of work in the Public Works Department is quite vast. And just in conclusion, I wanted to thank the directors, managers that are present this evening. They've worked really hard on their budget proposals and their presentations. It's a great privilege of mine to be able to work with them day in and day out on all these various initiatives. And Mayor, we're happy to address any questions or comments you or the council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to all the employees that gave presentations today. You know, I know we've heard a ton about our parks. We love our parks. I think planning is something that we've been paying particularly close attention to for a long time, and we appreciate the clarity of that presentation as well. And the professionalism, I'm glad to see another major road year coming in front of us in 2023, and we sure have made a heck of a lot of progress in the last 10-plus years. And my goodness, who would have thought a presentation about sewers and pipes would have been so darn interesting. That was very impressive, Mr. Moore. So thank you to everyone. So before we get into any council discussions, I do want to open up to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on any of the departments that were addressed tonight? Yes, sir? Come on up to the podium. You get, so what, this is not so let me be clear. So right now I'm asking if you have comments about any of the presentations they just made.
My comment is about 18 and a half between
Sure.
Mound and Ryan.
Okay, go
It's-
ahead. And
it's-
you get 4 minutes, okay? And you
Okay.
got a little timer
The
there.
roads are really deteriorating bad. I do a lot of walking, and I walk through, I love your parks, I love walking through them, but I've noticed two, I don't know what you call it, defects along the sidewalk along Mound Road there, between 19 and 18 Mile. It's, if somebody decides to run their car off the road just 3.5 feet, it's gonna hit a pedestrian on the west side of the Mound Road. So I figure, hey, you know, I would say about from here to about right here, if you're walking down that sidewalk and somebody has a blowout, you're gonna get killed. So it's a little bit of my concern. Now on Creek Drive, I think right in front of my house would be perfect light, you know, have a light put in there, because people fly. I mean, they downright speed. And we've had traffic monitors there to show them how fast they're going. They don't care. But the thing is people like me that walk, and sometimes it's getting a little dark on out. We'd like people, I take a flashlight, and I flash my light towards them so I don't get run over. So a little bit of lighting, maybe a solar light of some sort on the pole outside my house might be good.
Can I take a little bit of time?
Okay.
So I'll just take the last few minutes.
You can have your own 4 minutes if you want.
Oh, okay, it's just quick.
Okay.
I live on Creek Drive. We live there. I've been here about 5 years now. And it's a racetrack. We were told that by the people that, before we moved in, that it was a, Creek Drive is, you know, a straight shot all the way through. And then they made the new subdivision behind us, and kind of coned in on some streets in there. So we've got a lot of traffic. Not only is it a drag strip, but then we've got the motorcycles and all the racing because the parents get their kids all those race bikes. So it's really, really dangerous. I mean, majorly. I mean, I have traffic continuously all day long, but then they race it. So it starts at Mound and it goes all the way down almost to like, what would you say, 19 down
No,
there?
not quite.
Because it can't get totally down there because of the subdivisions, but it flies by us. So, and then, of course, 18 and a half is like totally in bad shape, to 18 and a half. So that's what we wanted to say. I know we've had accidents. We're a corner house, so we're Joad and Creek, and there's no stop signs on a lot of those streets. People just fly through them. And we've had accidents right at our corner because there's not even a stop sign. So it's a very dangerous street to live on.
Well, thank you for bringing to our attention. I appreciate that. What I think we should do is, if you don't mind, giving your name, address, and phone number to our city clerk. She'll share that with the city manager, share it with the police chief, our city engineer, whoever else needs to be made aware of it. And then we will contact you and see if there's some way we can start addressing these issues. Okay?
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so council, I guess it would be well, I guess I'll leave it up to you guys. Do you want to just talk about these items now and talk about any other budget amendments? Or do you want to talk about the budget amendments first, get those out of the way, and then go into general discussion? Or do you want to just kind of have a free-for-all for the next however many minutes? Is that allowed?
Barb gets two chances.
So I guess what we'll do is, I'll let you talk about we'll talk about any items, and if there are any budget amendments, now would be the time to bring them up. And then once we're finished discussing these items of the budget, then we'll go into, voting on the budget amendments. Sound good? Okay, so does anyone want to go first? Anyone want to go last?
We're gonna do budget amendments.
No, we're going to talk about, if you have any comments about what was presented, or if you have any additional budget amendments, this would be the time to bring them up.
Okay,
There aren't the two that we're already talking about.
yes.
The other two are already on a separate agenda item tonight, and we'll get to those. We'll vote on the budget amendments that have already been presented next. But for right now, any comments, any concerns, any further amendments? Mr. Yannis.
I'll go first. I have some comments, and then I'm gonna offer up an amendment. Mr. Langlois? Yeah. Thank you for your presentation, very good, as always. The ITC corridor, how wide is that corridor, and are we gonna be responsible for the maintenance of the entire width of that corridor?
I don't have an answer as to the width of the corridor.
The pathway that we're gonna be putting, not the entire corridor.
Okay.
Just the pathway that we're gonna be installing.
Okay, so our pathway would be, the generally accepted, width for accessible pathways now is 10 feet, 10 to 12 feet. My expectation is it's probably a 10-foot wide path is what's being planned and considered at this point. Plus, we would have some basic, green space along the side, each side of the path for, additional space. That would be what our level of concern and maintenance would be. Anything outside of those boundaries would remain with ITC corridor.
Okay, because I'm gonna assume that ITC is gonna continue to mow the grass on their part. Do we have any inkling as to whether they're gonna mow the grass around the pathway too, or is that gonna be our responsibility? Is that something we still have to negotiate with ITC, or?
I would say we would still need to negotiate that with ITC. I would offer this up, though. ITC does not cut on a consistent schedule like what we would traditionally
Okay,
cut.
that's fair.
So they probably come in more on a monthly basis and just knock things down as needed.
Okay. That's all I have for right now for you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's next, planning. Anybody from planning? Oh, there we go. Alexis was just waiting out the door.
She ran away before questions.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious when we're talking about planning, especially all the hotels that are being built.
Yeah.
And one of the things that that's been talked about here, has been talked about, that the meetings that we've all been to is, affordable housing and so forth. I'm certain that the folks that are working at these hotels aren't making huge dollars, right? And so one of two things is necessary for the people who are coming in and working are these moderately low-wage jobs, is one, available housing for them. And I think we saw something along the lines with that project that's going on at 14 a Mound. They have like 350 square foot units. That and then transportation, as well as it ties into planning to make sure that we get these employees in and out if they don't live here within Sterling Heights, or maybe they live a little bit away. Can you talk a little bit about providing housing for workers and, well, transportation as well? I'm assuming transportation is part of your forte, right, in planning?
We cover everything.
We cover everything. Thank you,
Yeah,
Doctor.
Definitely. So when we look at housing, there's a lot of housing studies, a lot of housing papers that are coming to council. We're working with Giffords Webster on these. The intention of the master plan is to kind of wrangle all of these together into some solid recommendations that we can move forward from a code perspective on allowing different types of housing. So right now we have to use special development options like our PUD or any other one that's in our code of ordinances. It's a lengthy process. We have to go into the agreement that you're all familiar with to create these different unit types. But an RRC best practice from Michigan Economic Development Corporation is allowing different types of housing by right in our zoning ordinance. So by identifying these, the need for these, the cost point in the market for the city, as long as some areas where we can develop different types of this housing, potentially as we ramp up from single family into our major corridors, where maybe younger people who work at hotels or want to move to this area and start their family would live, we can identify new places to allow this housing by right as we move along in the planning process. This way we have a diverse tapestry of housing in the city that is accommodating for everyone who wants to come and move here. It just takes a lot of research and a lot of input in finding the areas to do so. That's the intention of this process, moving forward with an in-depth housing study as part of the master plan. As for housing, part of our noticing requirement is to all type of service providers and regional authorities that are a part of Macomb County and the larger Metro Detroit region. As such, this would be SMART and any other type of public service transportation provider. We would outline the network, show areas of need along our major corridors and areas where we plan on seeing more development, like Lakeside, and then begin to incorporate kind of a long-range transportation plan as well. As Mr. Langway mentioned, there's a lot going on with parks and trails that's mentioned to the sustainability plan, and as we wrap that into the overall master land use plan, we'll start to see some of this come into fruition in writing as we identify areas for connection throughout the city, working with parks and planning and other regional entities as well.
How much do you tie this in with the employers?
Well, that's something that we're really wanting to be proactive in. Something that we think is going to be really beneficial is not just doing this public participation for residents, but opening it up for business owners as well. There's a lot of developers we work with that come to the community quite frequently, and a lot of developers who own these plazas that are looking for ways to revitalize their land use and use it in a very efficient manner. And by incorporating their comments as well is kind of a new transformative way for us to include everybody that's affected by the plan. And I think it's something that is a little transformative that staff is starting to put the feelers out for to move forward on sooner than later.
Very good. That's all I have. Thank you. And then, last but not least, Mr. Moore, I don't think you have to come up, Mr. Moore. Did he leave? Oh, there he is. He's sitting in the back.
You better not have left.
I don't know. Maybe he had to go to the bathroom. I don't know. I do want to say, I really love the idea of the steering committee. I think it's a great idea. I don't know what the cost is of maintaining a citywide fleet, but it's got to be extensive. So I think that's a great idea. There was just a spot, I can't remember what news show, but, several years ago, New York City took this dive into EVs, New York City Police Department. And it was successful enough that they decided to not only move to EV patrol cars, but they convinced Ford Motor Company to take their Mustang Mach-E and put a police package on it. The one thing I will say, as you have this intern going through the fleet, one thing that we do not include in pricing out the cost of things like an electric vehicle is the cost of carbon. What is the carbon footprint for each single vehicle? And I think that's something that we really need to take a look at to see what is the overall impact of the buying decisions that we make, whether it's a gasoline engine or an electric vehicle, and everything that goes along with it. So that's something I will throw out there to you, Mr. Moore, and hopefully your intern's a PhD student or something like that. It's very bright. And with that, do we want to do, you'll let everybody else talk first, or do we want to, do a motion for a amendment? Or
Why don't you make an amendment if you got one, and then we'll
I got
discuss
one.
that, and then we can,
you want to just,
like we did
okay,
last time.
yeah, well, let's get lively here. So I'm gonna make an amendment to the budget, that we decrease the millage rate from 16.38 mils to 16.37 mils. And I want to line out 8 of the 9 new positions that the city proposed to hire, which would be the DEI director, the GIS specialist, purchasing coordinator, assistant city planner, recreation supervisor, and leave electrical inspector, account clerk, and librarian as part-time.
Is there a second? Okay, hold on a second. I guess, Mrs. Varney, would you like to comment?
I think, Mr. Yanez, you meant 16.38 to 16.28?
Yeah, .38 to
I'm sorry,
0.37.
28, yes.
Sorry, yeah, .01 is not getting.
That's not going to do it.
Yes, no, I'm sorry.
She raised her hand, too.
Thank you for catching that. You can let it go, and then everyone said, yeah, sure, we'll do that.
Okay. So, Mr. Yanez, I guess, do you have,
A reason?
no, I guess, can you restate it? Because.
Okay.
So Ms. Koski, or I guess, will you withdraw your motion?
I can, sure.
Okay, you withdraw your
For the
motion.
reason of, you want me to withdraw my motion?
Because you did not state the
Because
correct
I
amount.
didn't state it right, yes.
Yeah, and I'd like you to withdraw it, but I'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But, so if you'll withdraw the motion and then just repeat it with the correct reduction.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw the motion, and I'll do this again. I want to
Slowly.
amend the budget from 16.38 mils to 16.28 mils, and line out 8 of the 9 proposed full-time positions, which are the DEI director, the GIS specialist, purchasing coordinator, assistant city planner, recreation supervisor, electrical inspector, account clerk, and librarian to remain part-time.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this, Mr. Yanez?
Yeah, so, there's a number of reasons why I'm making this motion. One is simply for the fact that, we talked about this last week. Prices have gone up on everything. Hey, gas, commodities, electric, the gasoline you buy, everything, the price has gone up. And people frankly need a break, and I think we're doing pretty good here. So there was a time when I was an employee here, it seemed like city council was constantly providing a budget that had some sort of tax cut to it. And, we're talking a rather limited amount of money in the grand scheme of things. And I just think that it would be it would be fair to our citizens that instead of maintaining the status quo, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, yeah, we're not increasing the millage rate, but the property taxes are going up. And they're going up significantly. If it wasn't for Headley, they'd be going up even more. So I feel, one, that's one of the reasons. Two, we're looking at, and we all got an invitation to attend an event for the fire department for their strategic plan. We don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know if it's going to save us money. We don't know if it's going to cost us money. We don't know how much it's going to cost us. And while I appreciate that all these positions are wanted, I don't know that we need to fill them right now. I would feel much more comfortable if we went through the strategic planning process with the fire department, find out what's really needed, and then we can move on from there. But we do know that we have fire trucks that are over 20 years old, one fire truck that they can't use on a regular basis because the engine's about to blow. We still haven't decided how we're going to move forward with responding to certain types of calls. It could be, and then on top of that, we have a overtime budget that's somewhere around $1.5 million. We also have an issue with people not wanting to take overtime. So a couple weeks ago, we had a fire at Balmoral Apartments. All but 2 of our people were on scene. We had to pull engines out of neighboring communities, taking away from their fire protection to back up our city. And it almost got to be a disaster. They had to call a mayday on that one. And strictly because there's not enough manpower. Not enough manpower. So I think we really need to get our ducks in order. We need to prioritize our position with this, with our departments, with the city, with the citizens. We need to know what our values are here, and public safety should be number one. I think people expect that. Everybody loves the parks. Everybody loves all this stuff, but really they want to be safe in their homes. And part of being safe in their homes is knowing that when they call 911, that professionals are going to show up and take care of their emergency. So this is simply an ordinance. We can amend this ordinance any given time. I don't think that we should be adding any more positions until after we go through the process with the fire department, see where we stand, and then we can move forward from there. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Gonski.
I totally agree with what he said. The fire on Belmore Apartments was just horrendous. And it's kind of sad to think that we had to use every single firefighter that we have except 2. I would hate to think that if it was something greater than that, what we would do. So I would like to see that study to come in, see what we're dealing with and what is recommended. And like Henry said, we can always go back and hire these additional people. Our budget is set at the 16.28. We're still going to have an increase in taxes because the value of the properties here in Sterling Heights have gone up. And the millage is assessed on the value, taxable value of the property. So we will have an increase. So I'm not at least bit concerned that if some of these positions are really major, that we will be able to fill them later on in the year. So I just don't want to put them in the budget.
Okay. Mrs. Varney? So a reduction of the city millage rate from 16.38 mils to 16.28 mils, a 1/10 reduction. Do you have an estimate of what that corresponding decrease in revenue would be?
Yeah, so our taxable value right now is about $5.4 billion. So a 0.1 mil decrease would decrease revenue by approximately $540,000. For the average resident, that would decrease our taxes by $9 a year.
And I was writing as quickly as I could, the 9 positions, or the 8 positions. I don't think I got all of them. But do you, Mr. Yan, is it fair to say that the 9th position, the one that wasn't proposed to be eliminated, was the social worker?
Yeah, my understanding is social workers being paid for out of the opioid settlement.
Everything besides the social worker and the electrical inspector, correct?
I had I thought
The
I
electrical
saw.
inspector, the account clerk, and the librarian are part-time positions. I called to keep them part-time
Okay.
positions.
Okay.
Do
Do you have an estimate, Ms. Varney, of what those positions would cost in the first year?
I mean, I don't have that off the top of my head. I
don't blame you.
I could add it, but I mean, I have it. It would take me a few minutes to get that total. But I did ask Mr. Rizek to turn the screen back on. These are the positions that are in the proposed budget. I would like to point out that the assistant city planner position was already approved by council and filled. The reason it's on this list is because, again, we always compare to the prior year's budget. So compared to the prior year's budget, it's an addition. If we were to eliminate that position, I mean, that's an actual position that
We would fire him. I get it.
I mean, is
Well,
that,
then I'll move to amend my motion to not remove the assistant city planner.
been a motion to amend the motion. Is there a second?
Yes.
It's been moved and supported. Okay, so we got to debate the motion to amend.
Just call the question.
We're going to vote on the motion to amend. Can we have a roll call vote?
What exactly are we voting on?
So we're voting on, to be clear, Mr. Yanez made a motion to amend the budget to eliminate the 8 positions, including the assistant city planner. The assistant city planner is a filled position, and it'd be quite awkward to fire him while he's sitting right in the audience here. I mean, I suppose you'd be able to stay until June 30th.
Yeah. Very true.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Zarko.
is there a chance that Mr. Yanis could just make another motion that would exclude that position?
He can if he wants, he can withdraw
And
both
rather
motions.
than vote on an amendment and then on the motion. So I think it would be less confusing to have the correct motion on the floor.
I'll give Mr. Yanez the floor for a brief moment to either pass or to do something else. Mr. Yanez, would you like to pass?
If it's easier for the council, I can remake the motion. Would it be clearer?
He needs to withdraw his motion.
You need to withdraw
I would need
both
to
motions.
withdraw. Are we voting on this motion next week? Are we voting on all amendments?
Tonight. Voting
made
tonight.
Next week?
No, tonight.
Okay, we're voting on tonight.
Amendments have to be voted on tonight.
Okay, all right. So I will withdraw the motion
Okay, you're withdrawing the motion to amend.
to amend.
Okay, the motion to amend has been withdrawn, it's off the table.
Now I'm going to withdraw my original motion.
Okay, your original motion has been withdrawn.
Okay.
Would you like to make it a new motion?
I would love to make a new motion.
Do you want to, Ms. Varney or Mr. Rizek, do you want to put that screen back on, please, with
Position.
the positions, so that might provide some,
Guidance, yes.
yeah, guidance for Mr. Yanez, thank you. Okay, Mr. Yanez.
Okay, so my motion is to reduce the city millage from 16.38 mils to 16.28 mils, and to line out or eliminate the positions of DEI director, GIS specialist, purchasing coordinator, recreation supervisor, and keep the electrical inspector, account clerk, and librarian part-time.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Do you need any further discussion on that, Mr. Yanez?
I think I've said everything that I need to say on that.
Mrs. Koski?
I'm fine.
Okay. So Ms. Varney, so he's asking to eliminate the DEI officer, the GIS specialist, the purchasing coordinator, to keep the inspector, clerk, and librarian part-time, and to eliminate the recreation supervisor. Again, I know, putting you on the spot.
It's okay. I mean, off the top of my head, again, a good average for a full-time position, including benefits, is $100,000. I mean, could be 80, could be 120. So, 300,000 for the three full-time. The difference between part-time and full-time is 30 to 50,000. So if you're asking me if the 540 would cover those positions, they would. The other thing I want to check, I believe the recreation supervisor is funded with recreating recreation dollars. I would want to double check that, which I could do if Mr. Rizek takes the screen down so I can look at the.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna make some comments, and if we do it, go around once or twice, that's fine. I have to say, I don't understand this. I don't understand why we would be doing this, and I don't understand why the discussion turned entirely to the fire department. I'm not sure what the fire department has to do with these positions and with a reduction. I thought we said, you've already said $9. The average house, I thought, was around $97,000. The average taxable value is around $97,000. Maybe it's 98. I knew it was something around there. So yeah, $10 for less than $1 a month. The residents would be getting, was it 1, 2, 3, 4 new full-time positions and 3 part-time positions going to full-time positions. And, we've had discussions, continuously over the last few years about getting workers back into City Hall, getting the support to the employees that we have, because our employees went from, in 2007-8, having, the highest level of employment we ever had, down to the depths of the recession, really getting cut badly. And then we've tried to increase numbers little by little, but we are dangerously close to stressing out our employees to the point where they're going to go to other cities. It's already happened. We've seen it. We can't keep doing that. We just can't. I mean, I hear in one breath, Mr. Yanez and Ms. Koski saying, our fire department is taxed to the limit and we need more employees. Well, that's the same situation, I think, in nearly every department. So by eliminating these positions and deferring transitions from part-time to full-time is just going to exacerbate the problem. And all for what? To save $10? I mean, I know people are hurting out there. I know everything costs more money. I know that inflation is at the highest level in decades. But nobody is going to notice a $10 difference in their property tax bills. Nobody is going to come up to us at the podium and say, council, thank you. I can't afford $1,589 for property taxes, but I can afford $1,579. I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, if the issue is that the fire department needs additional bodies and is going to need more funding, then why are we reducing the millage rate? Why aren't we allocating that, reduce those other positions and allocate the money to the fire department, right? I don't understand it. I'm going to vote no on this. I hope it doesn't pass. I don't think it's a good idea. I think we need these employees that are budgeted. And I mean, if we were talking about $100 or $200 or $300 of savings, that's real money that people can use to buy groceries, to buy gas for their cars, to help defray the costs of higher utility bills. But $10 in a year? That's not worth it. Mr. Radke.
You covered a lot of my points, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. I think this is foolhardy. I think that we're going to create a structural deficit in the city. to me, if taxes are going up this year 5%, not inflation. The city is affected by inflation, just like the residents are affected by inflation. Because we can't collect the full amount of what would be a taxable increase, we're actually going to have to pay more for things that we're not collecting money for. And then to reduce our budget even more, I think it's silly, frankly. Beyond that, we always talk about up here doing more with less. But since I ran for office, even now, I think we're doing less with less. Our employees are leaving. We've had several leave because they want to do less elsewhere and they can find jobs and money to make that happen. These are just a few of the positions that we need, but we need more than this. We have needs across the organization that were set back a couple of years ago because of foolhardy budgeting. And now we're doing more foolhardy budgeting right now to set the organization back even further. If this were to pass, I fully expect employees to leave, morale to hurt, and for us not to be doing what we're supposed to be doing for the residents, which is improving their lives. I caught, talking to Mr. Vanderpool here, that we were going to eliminate the assistant city planner who's sitting in the audience. This was not thought through. This is not necessary now. We need these positions. We need more than these positions. And frankly, also, we're going to set back our DE&I plan at least a year, if not more, by eliminating the diversity, equity, inclusion director. Now, if you wrap it in several other positions, it doesn't make it any less bad. You could say, well, it wasn't just her, it was the purchasing coordinator too, which we need, and the senior account clerk, which we need, and the GIS specialist, which we need, because we're doing trees and pipes and everything else we're tracking under the ground. So I think this smacks of ill-thought-out planning. I hope it fails. I'll vote against it. I think that we have a balanced budget this year. I credit administration for that. For once, I'm not complaining about most aspects of the budget. And to cut it now, I think, would be very foolish. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Mrs. Zarko?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Taylor. First of all, I'm not in favor of reducing the budget for the reasons that were presented. We've been understaffed for over 15 years. And when we were initially making cuts to all of the other departments, we said that we were going to eventually fill some of those positions. And we know that we've kept, we have a special millage for police and fire. We're taking care of our roads. So City Hall has really been neglected as far as filling positions. We all have a favorite department. If you ask me, where do I want extra money to go? I'd say the library could use about 4 more people, because I see a benefit there as being a part of the community and bringing community together. We all have a favorite department. I'm interested in listening to the firefighter strategic plan. However, when you have a strategic plan for a department, it's how they can do things better and not at the expense of all of the other departments. So I'm willing to listen, but they also know that they might have to have changes in what they're doing for their strategic plan, and it might not be business as usual. So those are things that strategic plan is supposed to bring out. So, and I'm hoping that's what we'll hear or what we'll talk about when we go to that meeting. So for me, I'm not proud anymore of our employee to resident ratio. I think that we keep saying it's like 4. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous how we ask people to work under these conditions. Not only that, is right now when recruiting is so difficult to get good people into good positions, and they want full-time jobs. They don't want part-time jobs. And we train them on this part-time job, and then what do? They walk out and get a job in another city at full-time. So how are we benefiting from all of these part-time positions? So I'm not in favor of the reduction. That's all I have to say.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I feel really blindsided tonight. We spent some time last week together, Mr. Yanez, and none of this was ever even mentioned. I have to say that over the last few years, when I've sat down with Mr. Vanderpool, pre-budget meeting, we always sit down and go through it all, and the slide comes up always of the ratio of employees to residents, and And probably 4 years ago, I started saying, Mark, that is not something to be proud of. It's not. It's something that we need to work on because we know that our employees are at the brink. And I can say in this whole list, there's probably one I could postpone. But that's not going to make a dent in Mr. Yanez's proposal. So I have to agree with some of my colleagues. This is, for a $10 a year reduction, I think that's foolish. It's foolish of us to just tax our other departments more. And as far as the fire department, we'll see how that all plays out, and we'll make adjustments from there if we can, if we have to, and if we can. So I have nothing further.
All right, Ms. Riska, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to amend the budget?
Absolutely. Mrs. Schmidt?
No.
Mayor Taylor?
No.
Mr. Yanez?
Yes.
Mrs. Yarko?
No.
Mrs. Kosky?
Yes,
Mr. Radke?
No. All right, motion fails. 2 votes in favor, 4 opposed. Mr. Yanez, anything else tonight?
We're doing these from last week
We'll
later.
do those next after everyone has on council.
I have nothing else.
Okay. Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Kyle Langlois, the Parks and Recreation Director. Mr. Langlois, I watched your presentation with bated breath. I'm so excited that we're going to finally create the pathway to Moravian Park that those residents have asked for years. I'm excited, and I'm so glad that we're getting that done. I have some questions, though, about the ITC Corridor Trail, which I'm also excited about. I think it'll be tremendous, but looking at the map, it seems to terminate at Clinton River, and I was curious why it doesn't continue onward into the southern section of the city. Now, I know that we don't want the Iron Bell Trail to go up that route, but as a resident of the southern section of the city, I think that a lot of the parks improvements seem to continually go into the north part of our city. And I'm wondering why the trail wasn't continued all the way down to 14 Mile through the entire ITC corridor. Mr. Langlois?
Great question. That's, as I mentioned in my presentation too, that southern portion of the ITC corridor is part of the Iron Belt Trail that we are looking forward to doing. How this rose to, the top of the list through ARPA projects, it was something that was debated, internally with administration and brought forward as part of we did the, the surveys with the public, and it rose to the top as a potential project. This, of course, gets at the development, with Lakeside Mall and connects to our established system already. I think your point of the southern section is something that we are continuing to, want to do, whether it goes, now or, a year or two down the road with grant funds would be, the next.
I remember talking about this during ARPA, but I guess my understanding was it was always going to continue through the entire city. And I guess I'm looking at the 15 Mile to Clinton River section, which would be skipped. That's, that's frustrating to me because, again, it's the southern section. That leads into my second part, which is the Southern Community Center. Because Warren Consolidated Schools is unwilling to work with us, the neighborhood quadrant that's bounded by Van Dyke to the west and Maple Lane to the east, south of 15 Mile, does not have a park in their neighborhood. They've never had a park in their neighborhood. I grew up in that neighborhood that's never had a park. And now if you want to move the idea of the grant toward south of 16, possibly east of Shaner, that's frustrating to me because it doesn't alleviate the problem in that neighborhood that there is no park or recreation space for those residents. So I guess I'm going to ask you to put your cap on and think a little bit harder about this. I'm frustrated with Warren Consolidated Schools because I think they performed a bait and switch on us. And I think that the residents there are frustrated with Warren Consolidated Schools because they were hoping to finally have the park that they so desperately want. And anyone, if you're curious, if they do want that, I urge everyone to knock on the doors in that neighborhood. I have. They want this. It's the first thing they bring up. Well, we loved when Sterling Heights had used Fillmore Elementary for a recreation center. Why can't we keep it? And I know we can't do that, but that neighborhood desperately needs a park. It doesn't need to be on Shaner. It doesn't need to be at 16 and Shaner. It needs to be in the southern section where the people want it. So I'm asking you to really think about that. I guess just a comment on the planning. I fully support a redo of the master plan. It's been a long time overdue. We also, and this ties together, we need to fix our zoning. I see a problem with something that happened at the most recent planning commission meeting where we had yet another conflict between the master plan and the zoning map. They don't match. And you have literally two opposite things happening at the same time because the underlying master plan says an area is mixed use and this is what's supposed to happen. And the zoning map says, no, it's commercial C3. So you have both not by right and by right. And we're eventually just going to get sued, and we're going to lose in court because our zoning map does not match our master plan. And that'll be that, I guess, because we refuse to alter it. To road reconstruction, through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw. Mr. Bayshaw, I mean, $71.3 million in investment is amazing. We really have leveraged our dollars to, I think, totally rebuild the road network in Sterling Heights. That being said, I look forward to the rebuilt Plumbrook with bike lanes, but I still urge that we need to have some kind of separation for the bike lanes. Just painting markings on the sidewalk that says bike lane does not make a thing a bike lane. It makes it a place where maybe a driver will look before they hit you with their car while you're biking. So we need to have some kind of separation. Other cities are doing it. Ferndale is doing it. Royal Oak is doing it. Detroit is doing it. If all these places can do it, we can do it right here in Sterling Heights. And I would urge you to look at a way that we can separate the bike lanes, either through pylons or curbs or some other method, so that bicyclists on Plumbrook feel safe bike riding. Otherwise, it won't happen. You can see that this problem exists in South Warren right now. Take Van Dyke South, past Centerline, and there's pavement markings that say bike lane in the middle of the street. And no one's going to do that because you're going to get run over by a car. You know, we just had an instance on 15 Mile in a pedestrian walkway we created where a car didn't stop and they ran over a guy. He went flying through the air and landed on the car. Thank God he lived. And that was something we created to protect people. And it says right there, yield for pedestrians. And they didn't. So I don't know why they would yield for bicyclists just because we say on the lane, bike lane here. So I'm urging you to really think about that.
Okay.
And then we talk about Maple Lane. I'm so glad that it's being at least redone south of Volpe, or I guess it's not a full repair, it's just an asphalt overlay. Is that correct, Mr.?
Yeah, it's a full repair. We'll pulverize the existing pavement and use it as a road base and put a full asphalt cross-section.
So I was curious because I saw that in 2027, you also have the same project on your slide. Are we just moving that project forward? Is that what we're doing, or?
Well, the idea with that project was we would continue with the three-lane profile that exists north of Volpe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
My fault. I must have misunderstood the slide.
yeah.
I guess to that, I know that they're finally, hopefully, starting construction on Maple Lane, on the housing at Maple Lane. But as of right now, there is no sidewalk on either side of Maple Lane from 14 Mile to Volpe.
Right.
I was hoping that if we are going to go in there and already do some work on the street, might we be able to add a sidewalk to the right side of the roadway as part of the entire construction? And I ask that because right now, we already had a bicyclist get killed there several years ago, biking on Maple Lane in the dark. He got struck by a car and was killed. So I'm wondering if we could possibly, if we're going to go in there already to play with the pavement south of Volpe where there is no sidewalk, could we add as part of that project sidewalk on the east side of Maple Lane to make that a little bit more secure? It also would help the Polish Century Club with their festival because right now, people cannot walk to the festival from any surrounding neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They have to be transported there.
Yeah, that is a key gap that we need to complete, and we are going to look at it as we were designing this asphalt roadway
Okay.
to see if we can do something at least temporary.
If we're already over there with the equipment, I figure, what's a little bit more?
Yeah, the city is reviewing that.
Okay. That's all I have for you, Mr. Bayshaw. Through the chair to Mr. Moore, the DPW director. I'm glad you didn't leave, Mr. Moore. I was worried.
He was on his way to Nicaragua. Puerto Rico is a lot of fun this time of
I
year.
fear that may stick with me for quite some time, but I guess it could be worse.
Like Super Mario, he's gonna go in one pipe and end up the other side,
Could be worse, okay.
I'm excited for both the fleet management system. It seems like it'd be a much improvement over what we currently have. I also understand that we're going to do a survey, I guess, of the current infrastructure underground to try to decide what to repair first, I guess, would be the goal there, Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I think that's going to be an overall view of the city infrastructure, pretty much in regards to some of the items that I mentioned. Age would probably be one of the key factors. That would, I think, I've spoken with the city engineer, Brent Bayshaw, who you just spoke with, and we felt that it would be best to go through his office where our department, we work heavily together, and my department would provide information as far as the amount of maintenance on specific areas that others may not be aware of.
Well, those slides are disconcerting because we have a lot of pipes before 1950 where we're just like, it's been around a while. And when I was working previously, I had seen some of the wooden water mains that still exist in Macomb County, which are fascinating. When they were replacing them, they're actually made of wood. So I'm curious about those older pipes. I guess my next question would be, in the past, we have not had a lead pipe problem because most of our piping was built after lead pipes went out of fashion. But if we have an undetermined number of older pipes, are some of them lead pipes?
No, so we have all of the tap cards and of materials, so there may be some discrepancies as far as the diameter of the pipe, but as far as the material of the pipe, we're very confident that none of the pipes were lead. In fact, that was part of an Eagle program a couple years ago, that we had to identify all of the service leads, which was more of the larger concern, and we were able to identify that Sterling Heights has no lead service.
We had none.
Correct.
That's amazing. That's very good. That being said, I look forward to voting on this budget. I think that it's a tremendous budget this year. We get more employees. We are accomplishing a lot of goals across the departments. I'm shocked that we came in at the same amount. I think that's a real congratulations should be given to the budget director and to Mr. Vanderpool for really sharpening their pencils and coming in exactly where we think we need them to be while adding tremendous service to the residents. I guess the final thing I would say is, and I'll just make a suggestion to Mr. Vanderpool, after talking last week, I think that, we went to an event together, Ms. Varney and I, and someone asked her what she did, and she said, she's the budget director. And they said, well, do you report to the chief financial officer? And she is the chief financial officer. So I'd urge Mr. Vanderpool possibly to change her title so that, because titles are free, but she deserves all the credit in the world for the work she does around here. And it was funny because she was talking to someone else and they didn't know what the budget director did in Sterling Heights. They thought she was like down the run. So I'd urge you to do that, Mr. Vanderpool. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. You want to get rid of the budget director? We're really making progress tonight. Council, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. I just have a couple of things. Through the chair to Mr. Langley. First of all, the green space at Fillmore, is that still in play possibly?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking that question, and I've had the opportunity to address Councilman Radke before I would have done so, but the green space and Southern Community Center are not exclusively tied together. So we can look at the green space still at Fillmore in the park. That's something that we've had conversations with superintendent about. It just has to look a little different because the way we were originally planning to acquire the entire property included that all together. So it is still in play and may be a viable opportunity for us and would certainly get at the fact that we lack a park in that section of the city.
And we still do have grant money? No?
We never got the grant money for green space. We applied, but wasn't recommended for funding. So we still have the $1 million appropriation for a Southern Community Center space through Representative Shannon. So again, two separate ideas.
Could that be used towards the green space?
Potentially.
Okay.
So I think there needs to be, based on what was passed, an indoor component somewhere as part of that to potentially qualify for what the appropriation truly said. But I think it could potentially be combined as part, again, depending on what conversations happen down the road.
Okay. And also, kudos to improving Donovan parking lot. my son played there many, many years ago, and it was unsafe then, and it's about darn time that we got that done. So, so I'm real happy about that. I think that's it for you. As far as, Dr. Purcell. First of all, I have to say that I absolutely love the picture that you had on your one graphic, because it has my 26-year-old son at 7. And today's his birthday, so.
Oh, happy birthday.
So that kind of just cracked me up. So anyways, I don't know how to say this, or I'm just going to say it. A lot of the residents that moved into Sterling Heights to be in a suburb.
Yeah.
To be in a bedroom community. In this big push for high density, I think we need to take it slow. And we can differ in opinion, Mr. Radke, but I just think that everyone needs to be considered when we look at that master plan.
Yeah.
And the people that are here right now have paid for and developed this community into what it is, and to try and ram some high-density projects near single-family residential, I think we need to move very slowly on. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to have my opinion, and that's that. As far as the North Van Dyke development.
Yes.
What's the plan for the existing businesses that are there that have no intention of moving?
Yeah, so I'll tackle that first, and I do have a comment about your question, or the housing, as well, but, so the way you look at the master plan is more of when redevelopment happens, that's the standard it's held to. We're not going in there and removing, businesses from existing right now. They're not being forced to come into compliance with what the master plan or code dictates. It's when they retire or they sell the business or someone makes an offer, they come in and they're held to that standard. So a great example is the flats that came in. There's ongoing discussion, of how they got there, and it was a vacant lot. There's pieces like that throughout there that will probably begin to be developed first. And then moving forward as other, business owners, let's say 2 business owners next to each other, decide they have a plan that's now feasible, allowed by the master plan to make a more dense development right along the central kind of node of the district. They can now work together and work with the Office of Planning to come up with a concept plan that, expands their business, and we will allow for that now. So we're not displacing anybody. It's when they eventually, come in for redevelopment, that's the new standard that we're going to be enforcing in that district.
And I certainly hope we wouldn't pressure existing business owners to feel like they need to move or
No.
they need to make a decision, because they've been established there for many years as well.
No, never. In regards to your thoughts on housing, I agree it does need to go slow. We're not going to be doing this in 5 years. The master plan vision that's shown for the mixed-use corridors and the nodes won't be accomplished when we come back here in 2028. We're looking at protecting the neighborhoods. Planning Commission had amazing ideas, such as creating names for them, locking them in as landmark neighborhoods that the city has been established on for a long time, and then really carefully working with staff to earmark areas for this development so it doesn't encroach on these housing. That way you're not next to a large apartment or something like that in your single-family home. It ramps up in density towards these designated areas. So it's a safeguard for people who have lived here and want to continue to live here as such, but also it helps move certain areas that are underutilized, like these parking lots, mixed-use nodes, into the higher density. So as much as it moves forward in a progressive way, it builds the city cohesively while protecting the people whose investment's been here for a long time.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
No problem.
I think that's all I have for you. Mr. Bayshaw, Moravian, it boggles my mind that that's not being done this year. And I understand it's a county road and we don't have a whole lot of control over that. I am going to charge you with making sure that the county maintains that road for the next year, because it's deplorable. And I'm sure you've driven down it, and you know it, and the fact that, like I said at the last meeting, we have a lot of very large trucks on that road, and that road was not built for that kind of traffic, just adds to the problem. So that's my charge to you.
Challenge accepted.
Good. And Mr. Romano, I'm going to challenge him too. And that's all I have for you, Mr. Moore. I just have one question about the high-pressure jet trucks. Is that something that we do like periodically, or you just do it when there's a problem?
So the high-pressure jet trucks run anytime that weather allows. Obviously, with the water and the freezing temps, those trucks could freeze. So they are limited to the varying temperatures. However, we do have one truck that has a heating element that can go out in some of the colder weather. But to answer the question, that work, that is a high priority for that division, and typically we have 2 trucks out every day doing the jetting and cleaning of the underground system.
And where do they access it?
So the access points are at all the sanitary structures, and they're typically 300 feet apart. So what would happen is if there's a jet truck in a camera truck, they would access at the 300-foot separation, and they would run the camera. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but for example, the jet truck pulls a vacuum, and then the camera truck can run 300 feet to that structure, so the sanitary is flowing. You can see the inside perimeter of the wall.
Okay, well, very interesting. Thank you. That's all I have. I have nothing further, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Schmidt. Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I have, my first questions are going to be for Mr. Langlois. It's about the path that connects to the Freedom Trail, the part that we're responsible for between Shaner and almost behind Freedom Hill. I noticed that the gates are locked, and there's boulders there to make sure that there aren't any motorized vehicles that can get through, but it certainly doesn't look too much like a trail now. So, is that, through the chair to Mr. Langlois, is that something that's going to be permanent, or were we just going to lock the gates when the concerts were going on?
The original plan was to have the gates available to be locked in the event we felt that we needed to potentially protect the trail from vehicular traffic going through. The boulders got added because there was an incident of a vehicle coming off of the parking lot of Freedom Hill and driving through the drain to a subdivision close by. So that was a temporary stopgap. We need to get those boulders moved because that's certainly not meant to, those aren't meant to be there. The gate is there for that protection if we feel that that's necessary, and we felt because of that recent incident that it was appropriate to keep it closed in the short term, just to at least help people in the area to recognize that vehicular traffic, whether it's actual cars, trucks, or even ATVs, UTVs, or other type of non-authorized vehicles are not going on the trail in that manner, so.
And I did notice that there, in the wintertime, you can see the paths where the four-wheelers come through from the subdivision. So I can see how they get back there. Okay, now the resurfacing of this is first of all, is the surface that we have on that trail the same one that we have on the trail that goes from Delia Park to the hospital?
Yes, correct.
It is the same. Do we have to resurface that every year?
Not every year. There's still work that needs to be done to kind of finalize and close out that project. So they're going to be working on those areas that need to be, as I mentioned, punch list items that need to be worked on to get the grade to where we want it. They'll resurface it accordingly, and then probably every few years. It'll take regular maintenance like we would do a ball diamond, actually grooming it with an infield groomer, but the actual placement of new material should be, on a every few years type of a basis, as needed.
Okay, only because when it's wet, people still ride their bikes through there, so there's little trenches, and I just wondered if that was going to be something that was going to be taken care of. And I do know that, because I walk it enough, that where the standing water is, so that there's got to be some kind of crown or, you know, in the path or whatever, so the water doesn't sit in the middle of the trail. The other thing is, we talked about the expansion of that trail. We talked about the west end of the drain. Has there been any discussion about extending it west from Shaner to Dodge Park?
Yeah, I think that section remains in our master plan as a potential future project as well. The way the county is kind of going about their business and providing us an opportunity to collaborate is they have their plans to do certain sections of the drain where they're making improvements in daylighting. So the next section that they're going to be working on is that section to the west from the backside of Delia, and that's why they approached us about collaborating on a grant opportunity. So they're systematically going through the entire stretch of drain and doing sections, and as they are doing those sections, it makes sense because they're building access roads to do their work for us to potentially come in, build that pathway afterwards, and then use it as a non-motorized trail. So I think, ultimately their goal, Commissioner Miller's goal, and I know our goal too along the way, is to have full connectivity east to west along the relief drains. When exactly that, happens, I think that'll be up to us and how we, allocate funds for budgeting down the road, but also how the county continues to do their work in the drains, then we'll kind of follow along.
And I think they were waiting for some kind of commitment from us, so that they knew they had a partner in what they were doing, so it's like we didn't back out at the last minute. So I appreciate that. But the reason why I ask is there are people that live like between Dodge Park and Van Dyke that will come down Canterbury and then pick up the trail. And actually, people will tell you, if they're a biker or a pedestrian walking, that they feel safer on the trail than they do on the streets or the sidewalks. And so I can see where it really is a benefit, and we keep talking about non-motorized, transportation throughout the city, so people want to use their bikes or their feet, I think it's a great idea. The cricket, is it a cricket court at Delia Park? Do we have a league already? Are there local leagues that will be using that field, or how does it work?
Yeah, we have a very large cricket playing community here in Sterling Heights, not surprising, as we know we're a diverse community, and so we've been renting our fields, our baseball diamonds, to cricket leagues and users for probably a half dozen years now. They play a modified version on our baseball fields. This will give them the opportunity to play, full scale. Right now, they're not using the cricket field because it's not completed, but I've had, just in the past probably month, I've had multiple cricket groups looking to host tournaments and start league play, wishing that it can be done sooner, but we've expressed kind of what the timeline is moving forward, and they're ready. They'll get some play on it this fall, but it'll really crank up come spring and summer of next year is when their main playing times are.
Any discussion about disc golf or foot golf?
Yeah, disc golf, we actually just rekindled that conversation not that long ago with some members of the community that are interested in seeing that come to fruition. I just reviewed some plans for their new design of the disc golf course, still at South Nelson Park, familiar with that area. So it's on the other side of 15 Mile Road from the main development of Nelson Park, looking at a 18-hole course, nine tee pads with 2 baskets per hole, so it'll create an 18-hole course with a smaller footprint than what others have proposed in the past. So it'll be a nice development for that area, nice use of the wooded space there. Hopefully within the next few months, we'll be able to identify what some of those costs are going to look like and decide whether we're going to move forward in the future with a request in next fiscal year, or if that's something we can tackle, with other means along the way. Foot golf's a little more challenging. Tends to play better on an actual golf course than probably creating a separate foot golf area. I think those are opportunities. In fact, we've had meetings with the developers from Maple Lane that might be even some good opportunities for them to develop into their new development along the way.
When I think the city manager, Mayor Taylor, Ms. Schmidt, and I played, it was at the end of the golf season. It's like when not that many people are playing, so they do it like in the spring before everybody really gets started golfing, and then after, you know, the leagues are finished in the fall. So it was fun. We enjoyed it. I think it'd be a nice addition, and I don't think it's that costly, to be honest with you, especially if we can get one of the golf courses to help us out. Okay. The lights that are being replaced over at Dodge Park, and you said that it's like censored, it'll be dawn, is it dawn to dusk, is that, or dusk to dawn? Or is that, can we turn them off so that, when we want to empty out the park, that it's dark back there? And I don't know how the neighbors feel about that.
Yeah, great question. So the lights that we would put in, we actually set the time frames for when they're on and off. So we would set them to come on automatically about 15 minutes before the sun sets, and then they'll stay on until the park closes, which is either 10 o'clock or earlier in the winter times, right? And so we set those parameters as to what time they're on, but the nice part is as the days get shorter by 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, the lights turn on automatically to accommodate the longer dark periods of dark. And so we don't need to make any adjustments manually to that, even electronically. That just happens automatically. So the other nice part about these lights is they will actually have there will be much less light kind of spill over from the lights than what we currently have out there. So the neighbors should be even happier with these lights than what's currently out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I think that's it. So nothing further there. And then Dr. Parcell or Ms. Richards, whoever, I have, I don't know my plans. I only have a couple of questions. Is the building that used to be part of the Sterling Inn that's on 15 Mile, is that building going to be demolished or is it going to be renovated? Because it's terrible. So I guess I would want to know what the intentions are for that development as to what they're going to do with that building. Go through the chair to.
Yeah, I'm not explicitly familiar with that one off the top of my head. But, you know, when it looks at the master land use plan, it looks at designation for the land. We urge the structure to be reused in a way if it's feasible, rather than demolishing and coming back in with a completely new build. So we'd have to evaluate it with the developer that came in. But our goal is to make it as friendly as possible for redevelopment.
Okay, and then I have another question. Is when we go through the planning, the master planning, do you foresee us putting a moratorium on anything for a period of time? Well, it might be new regulations, and the first thing that comes to my mind is car washes. And gas stations. As we move forward and we want to put some of, we want to develop these, you know, parcels the best way that we can, is there anything that we are going to need to think about, figure out if it's going to have a new rezoning or a new look before we just go ahead and say, oh, this parcel's empty and they want to put a gas station there?
Yeah, I'd like to explore that from a location perspective as well. Maybe looking at protecting some of these nodes. They're few and far between and not relatively large. So every, you know, square foot of land there really is going to matter, horizontally, vertically, no matter how you look at it. Looking at these different types of developments that you mentioned, the goal is to bring everything into kind of alignment with one, really hash out what we want there through the master planning process, and then codify it and give it some teeth through the zoning ordinance as we move through there. Obviously, that does take time, so it's something we would have to explore when we got to there, and we'd have to meet with the city attorney team to discuss. I would be all for it, though. As I mentioned, you know, protecting that land is incredibly valuable to get the type of development that we want to see there.
And I'm not saying do it forever. I'm just saying, well, we're in the planning stages so that we can, you know, postpone it.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
I'd love to
Okay,
explore that.
all right. So that's, if we could look at that, that would be great. And I think that's it.
All right.
All right. Mr. Bayshaw. When you were talking, is it bioswales, through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw, bioswales on Mound Road?
Correct.
Okay. You know, I haven't been to the north end of Mound Road in probably about a month, but I noticed that the medians were almost like miniature moguls. They weren't flat. Is that part of the bioswale construction, or was that just not leveled out the way it should have been?
About Probably about half of the median is gonna be landscaped berms, so you might be seeing that.
Okay.
And then there's 9 bioswales that go through the whole 9 miles of the corridor. So the bioswales are the depressed areas, and there are little cutouts every now and then for, if there's a utility there or a street light is going to be going there, so that might be what you've seen in the bioswales.
I think that's a great idea, especially the vegetation that's going to absorb, use the water. So I think that's a great idea. The realignment at the corner, or I don't really call it a corner, Utica Road and Plumbrook. And you said it's to improve vision, and that would be like looking to the west, I would think?
Correct.
If you were going like northeast or to get onto Plumbrook, like at, is it Carpathia Club that's there?
Yeah, if you're traveling
Yeah.
southeast on Plumbrook and you're making a right turn onto Utica Road,
Yes.
usually the angle is so skewed that it's hard to look and get a
Exactly.
clear vision of oncoming traffic.
And then I noticed that the list of the local roads, do we still do an annual assessment of the remaining roads that haven't been fixed and put them in priority? So that, I know that sometimes we have residents that come to us in the middle of the summer and saying that a road's falling apart. And I just wondered if we already have the assessment done for that particular road or whether we have to go out and do it.
Yeah, we rate the roads annually, all 290 local roads. And then we have, actually on our cone zone, we have a map that shows these ratings. So you can go on our website and see how your local road is rated.
And that's annually, correct?
Correct.
All right, I think that's it, unless you can help let me know how many electric vehicle charging stations, private ones, we already have in the city.
I don't know that answer.
All right. That was the only thing I had. Actually, I just have comments for DPW. I mean, what can you say about the Department of the Year, except they did everything right? They got a brand-new building, everybody's happy. But I will say, I did experience the process of a water main break in front of my house that happened at 1 o'clock in the morning, and Mr. Vanderpool read my letter, so you all know about that. And you got a plan, and it works. It also helps that if you live there and you tell them where the water shut off is because it happened before, that's helpful too, but I appreciate that. So I think that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Zarka.
But you know what, before we leave, I think Mr. Petrusik might want to introduce himself to the community since he's been sitting here all night patiently with us. So maybe after we get through this and we go into communications, we could ask him to, give a quick bio.
Think of some very funny stories you can tell about Mark Krzyzewski, 20 to 30 seconds tops. Your favorite hobbies.
All
You
right.
got some time. Mrs.
All right.
Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple quick questions through the chair to Ms. Barney. On page 69 of our nice big fat budget, City of Sterling Heights millage rates, it goes from 2015 to 2024 with a breakdown of our pretty colors. How much was the RS&T? That was paid off?
Yeah,
How come you didn't reduce the budget that much? The millage.
So what we did was, because we knew that the refuse contract was expiring in April, and we know that refuse costs are going to increase, even if we keep the same service we had, we know that refuse costs are going to increase. We've been seeing contractual service increases in 20 to 30% across the board. And we also know, based on strategic planning, that the plan is to go to a universal cart and universal recycling, which, if you recall from strategic planning, is going to increase the cost of refuse. So rather than reduce the millage for the RS&T, and again, the RS&T was about 0.1 mils, 0.1096. So again, $9, $10 a month per resident. But, so we took that, based on an estimate of how much refuse cost is going to go up for the last 2 months of the year, and we went ahead and added, basically, kept the millage rate flat across the city, but increased the refuse millage in anticipation of increased costs. The alternative that would be if I had left the refuse millage the same, and then next year, I would have to increase the millage for the increased contract, plus I would have to make up the 2 months of increased costs that I would not have recovered in this year's millage. So next year, that millage increase could have been, very significant to residents. So the goal was to smooth it out and make it easier and as painless as possible.
Do we not pay any more drain millage? Is that eliminated now?
We haven't had a drain millage since I've been finance director, so at least 5, 6 years.
How long has Candace Miller been in office?
January 1st, 2017. 6 years.
No, I don't see it on there at all, and that's why I was wondering what happened to it. Okay, thank you. Just a couple questions, probably to either Dr. Purcell. You're going to have a lot of work coming up this coming year in regard to planning. You're going to redo the master land use plan, 5-year plan, and I understand that you're also going to make some revisions on the zoning ordinance. Mm-hmm. What is the plan for the master use plan? What direction do you feel that we're going to be going in?
That really is dependent on what we get from our research on our updated socioeconomic data and what our community participation events yield. The whole wonderful part about the planning process is it's a grassroots process that comes from the community. So we get shaping the plan as we go through talking with community members and also now with staff moving forward on, with the business community as well. I envision really just firming up and paying special attention to some of our sub areas that have been designated already, putting everything onto the same page and making sure that we have a cohesive planning approach for the city. Like what I mentioned to Councilmember Schmidt, protects the people who have been here, but also makes it attractive in a streamlined development process for people who want to come here. And then for the zoning ordinance, some of those moving forward may be put on the back burner. We discussed parking at one of the last meetings. When we move forward on the master plan update, that may trigger a change in parking that would make it kind of fruitless to redo that ordinance currently, just for us to redo it in a year. So we'll have to really evaluate everything at the high level and then break it out into, a month-by-month basis on how we move forward. Obviously focusing for zoning on things like enforcement first. Shipping containers is coming up in June. Bees is relatively, uninvolved with the master plan, things like that. And then addressing some high-level things that really focus on land use moving forward, next year.
How do you plan on contacting input from the community? How do you plan on doing that?
So the 2017 plan did a wonderful job working with our community relations department and having an online webpage for it. I think our community relations department's fantastic in their outreach work they do. So we definitely plan on tapping into them and working on advertising it in a lot of different ways, both through our social media channels, at City Hall and at these meetings as we go along. It's a rolling basis. So, we send out an intent to plan. It's published. We look forward recruiting people to come to these information sessions as we go there. And honestly, a lot of it comes back to staff. It's not exciting to say, come put dots on a piece of paper and tell us where you want new buildings to go. We have to engage and educate as we have these, meetings. Ms. Richards and Mr. Fox are wonderful planners, and I look forward to getting them out in front of the public as we do this, and then building up a relationship with the planning department and the people at these meetings to really make it a very personalized plan.
So basically taking 4 quarters of the community and holding meetings in different areas to reach out to the community?
Yeah, definitely. And, there's no rock that we'll leave unturned. We'll advertise it to everyone we can. Ideally, be working with the consultant team that'll specialize a bit in this, having both in-person and online feedback, and then, continually giving updates here to city council and allowing for public comment there.
Are you also going back over the petitioners on the zoning board of appeals, people that want to have a project that is against our zoning ordinance that might be something that we should change? As an example, I really don't know what to use. A gazebo in the backyard, it have to be so many feet from the fence, so many feet from the house. Are you going to look at things like that also?
No, that's a wonderful example. We have a lot of variance requests, and if we can find a way to curb those, potentially uncovering a flaw that exists based on where we have our ordinance, some type of, oversight that has been looked over time, and then eliminating that through this planning process, not only will we reduce workload and variances required, but be able to move forward on, higher quality development that way. So I definitely will look into that as well.
Are you tracking any of this information, or is that something that you're going to have to go back and go through the meetings?
Nope, on our Zoning Board of Appeals webpage, we have an annual report that Ms. Richards put together this year. It has a list of every zoning case that was heard last year for a variance and the outcome of it, and there's also one for the Planning Commission as well. So we have this for the last 5 or 6 years.
I'd appreciate it when you have your meetings with the community, if you'd let council know in case we want to drop in and listen.
You'll be the first to know.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Mound Road?
Yeah, oh, okay. You said thank you, I didn't know if I could go.
Oh, you love Mound Road, huh? Just a quick question. What are those structures in the medium around 18 Mile Road?
Mr. Bayshaw, do you want to handle that?
You may know this one.
The lights.
He'd prefer not to.
Public art.
Is that what that is, public art?
Yeah, I mean, Jake was right. They're public art. So there's structures that will be, they look out of place now because there's nothing around them, and people have asked me, what are they? Are they for a special purpose? They're an artistic purpose. They will be uplit internally eventually and landscaped around. And once the landscaping scheme comes through, I think they'll show a little bit better for what they're purposed for.
So what all is going to go through the medium throughout Sterling Heights? The bioswales, is that going to be all along there, or?
Yeah, if you drive it now, it's pretty much to grade. There'll be some minor corrections to the grade that'll happen. The mound areas will be landscaped. There'll be heavier landscaped around the intersections where the structures are at the major road intersections. And the bioswales themselves will be landscaped. There are certain type of plantings that they put in those bioswales to take the contaminants out of the roadway drainage and oils and things that run off of the roadway. So that's called the first flush, and these address the first flush. But there are also plants and types of trees that you could find anywhere around in the city. Like for example, there's rows of river birches that will be within the bioswales, which are, to me, are nice looking trees.
One other question. 17 Mile Bridge over Plum Brook. That's in the plan to do when?
That'll be next year in 2024. We're going through the design right now.
Okay, do you have any idea whether that's going to go back to, 4 lanes in there? Or are they going to keep it at 2, 3?
Well, we're not doing anything with the abutments or the piers because those are in good condition. So we're just replacing the superstructure of the bridge. So we're putting it back at the same width. It would be more expensive to try to reduce it.
Are there any plans to widen 17 Mile all the way down?
We do not
Or
have
east, I should say.
east. There's nothing in the immediate 5-year plan to do that.
So it'll just narrow down again after the bridge, after Plum Brook?
Correct.
Okay. You're doing a great job. I'm glad to hear that we're going to be working on so many of our local streets and get us all up to good.
Yeah, we've made good progress. We're getting, I think it's near 23% of our local road is in good condition, which is a vast improvement from when we started Safe Streets in 2013.
What year do you think we'll get to 50%?
Oh, geez.
Yes.
Well, let's not discount roads in fair condition, because the roads in fair condition are pretty good to drive on as well. I think to get to 50%, it will take some time. You know, roads kind of fall back into fair, but there's a lot of roads in fair condition that people would think you're crazy if we went in to try to reconstruct it. So I think the goal is to keep our roads in fair, in the upper end of fair, and in good condition, and I think we're on our way to doing that.
That's mainly what I was after is we're going to keep pushing with our repairs to get either fair or good condition over the next 10 years or so.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works. I love the idea of the steering committee, software to track operations, the repair and maintenance of the pipes, and of course our star department of the year. You're doing a great job there. Any comments, additional comments on the steering committee, what your goals are?
To be transparent, we'll go through the budgeting process, the capital vehicle replacement process, and we really in truly desire to have a good line of communication with all departments and make sure that their expectations are met, repairs are turned around timely, and we can improve the fleet so that everybody's happy.
Now, are you doing the repair on the ambulances and the fire trucks, or is that farmed out?
We do the repairs on both.
In your opinion, what is the status of our vehicles for the fire department?
I'd say they are in good condition. I haven't heard anything far to the contrary, but I may, through this committee, there is a liaison on that committee from the fire department, so I may learn more in depth about those vehicles.
So you are part of that?
I am, yes.
Okay. That's basically what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much. One other comment, Parks and Rec. I'm glad to see that we're moving along with Donovan Park. I would like to see that parking lot improved quickly, and I would also like to see the entrance moved to the, I guess it would be to the east of where it is currently on Clinton River Road. Any comments?
Just for clarification, when you say improved, you mean just usable for parking?
Yes, like maybe a gravel parking lot or asphalt or something.
We're going to take this year to at least bring it up to, I guess, more of a natural parking area to see how it gets used, and then that'll give us time to come forward with any type of design plans or requests for future capital projects. The entrance, I do expect that we may be able to create a second entrance. The formal entrance that's there right now likely would stay, but there's an opportunity to create a secondary entrance, especially into that additional parking area, which we do hope to also link to the original parking area as well, so people can get in and out from both directions.
That's great. Do you have teams scheduled to play this summer?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we're still actually taking registrations for baseball and softball, but Donovan Park continues, as we continue to make improvements there, it continues to be a popular location, not only for our youth baseball and softball teams that play there. We also use that as our home fields for our adaptive recreation softball teams. We have 4 teams that play in traveling adaptive recreation softball leagues. We use that for adaptive kickball, and we have a number of rentals that actually utilize that space as well throughout the summer and fall months. Travel teams, federation baseball teams, softball teams. We work with Henry Ford High School. They use our fields when their fields are either encumbered or in a condition that they can't play on. Our fields do play better, so we get requests consistently from the school district as well.
Are there any plans for any kind of a bathroom facility there?
Future planning, yes. I think as we continue to utilize that space more and more every year, I think it makes the case for us to have that in our consideration and our planning for the future. Last few years, we've been bringing in portable toilets, multiple portable toilets to support that need. But I think as we look at, long-term, long-range planning for that facility and a number of other facilities that get tremendous use, Rotary Park, where we have the end of our, canoe and kayak water trail. Those are all places where I think more formal restroom facilities will need to be considered in the future.
Well, that's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Doing a great job there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Koski, and once again, I want to thank all of the directors, managers, employees who are here tonight, presented to us. Second night was as good as the first. Appreciate all the information about the departments and answering my colleagues' questions diligently. Thank you particularly, Ms. Barney, for answering questions and for your presentation and for your leadership in preparing the budget. And as Mr. Radke said, I echo his sentiments that this is a budget I'm quite proud to be voting on, and I think it really strikes the proper balance between all of the priorities that I know I have and that I think the community has as well. So very, very well done, job well done, and again, thank you. So we will move on to the next item, which is the budget amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I just had two quick final questions.
Okay. Mr. Radke?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I know you were done. Just very briefly, I guess through the chair to Mr. Moore, the DPW director. I am looking forward to the new universal recycling at the homes. But one thing I put on my front page of my budget plan was I think it's incumbent upon us as a council to really pass an ordinance to ensure that recycling is available at condos and apartments in the city. Because I know that we want to close the final recycling facility, but if you just look at all the projects that have come before us in the last 2 years, almost a lot of them are condos and apartments. So if we close that final recycling facility and do not require that condos and apartments add some kind of recycling capacity, then there are going to be a significant number of residents who have no way to recycle in the city. So I would urge you that when you are both going through the process, when we come up with a new garbage contract, I think that there should be an ordinance attached that mandates that condos and apartments in the city must offer. People aren't required to recycle, but they must offer some type of recycling to the residents. Otherwise, I can't vote in good conscience to close the last recycling center in the city. I know that my kind of people go to the recycling center because there is no way to recycle. And our board won't add it, but if the city requires it, they'll have to add it. So that's what I would urge to do. And my final thought is on planning. And I just wanted to stress about missing middle housing and our neighborhoods. Residents in the city are equal across the city. People who have been here for 5 years or 25 years, they vote, and they are equal. We treat them equally. We have to evaluate our neighborhoods for things like missing middle housing, duplexes, ADUs, townhouses, different forms of housing. And the market is what's going to decide these housing options. We have report after report that says our city is aging severely significantly, and new forms of housing are what residents are seeking. And if we refuse to change, and if we do not add the housing people are looking for, they will buy it elsewhere. And our city will age. At that point, our city will die. Because if people aren't moving in, our tax rate stays deflated because of Headley and Proposal A. And I don't want to name names, but there are cities in this state that we all know about who have a significant number of single-family homes that are basically, they're taxing twice as much and collecting the same because of the way their tax structure is. I don't want anyone to leave. Same with North Van Dyke. I think it's in the business owner's best interest to evaluate their business. If you go up North Van Dyke now, there's a lot of empty facilities. There's a lot of vacant lots, vacant things. If we make North Van Dyke nice, I don't think a business owner is going to say, you know, I really like my vacant lot that I've been paying taxes on all these years. I want to keep it. I think he's going to go, you know what? We've now increased the value of all the surrounding properties, including my own, and I'm going to sell it for development. I don't think we're going to force anyone out. I think they're going to be knocking down our doors to sell because they're going to make money. We're going to create profit for them. We live in a capitalistic society. So I would urge you, with all due haste, to really make a plethora of options across the entire city. Our city is mostly single-family homes. If we resolve not to work in our neighborhoods, we might as well just tear the whole thing up. We're not going to have any success because our city is more than 50% single-family zone. So we have to think logically and critically and expeditiously to ways that we can add to our neighborhoods, like ADUs, without changing the character of our neighborhoods. Townhouses do not change the character of our neighborhoods. They're just attached buildings. Duplexes, which I grew up in, do not change the character of a neighborhood. Because on my street in Detroit, where I grew up, you wouldn't know if a house was a duplex or a single house by looking from the outside. Some have double doors, but ours did not. You would know from the interior. We can do this so that residents still have the neighborhoods they love while adding capacity, because we all see the housing reports. We need thousands of housing units, so I'd urge you to do that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the budget amendments. So the first budget amendment we have is for the National League of Cities membership and conference. Is there council? Well, actually, I'm going to go to the audience first. Mr. Ojada, you want to speak on these budget amendments? Okay, do you have anything on the prior consideration, or the prior item? Because I overlooked you. So I'll give you 4 minutes if you want.
Mr. Radke conveniently has said a lot of what I had come up here intending to say. I have lived in the city for 27 years. I help take care of my ma. I'm not going to receive the house when whatever happens, happens. I literally can't afford to live here. I cannot afford to buy a property here. I have been scanning Zillow for the last 8 months. I literally cannot afford a single property on the market in Sterling Heights, where I have lived my entire life. We need housing. We need affordable housing. Many of you have heard me come here a number of times asking about and talking about affordable housing. And it's personal. I find it insulting to be told that because I haven't personally paid the property taxes, that I'm less invested in the community. And I know that's not the exact verbiage that was used, but the implication is what I felt. I'm not alone in my situation here. I'm a young person. I have a lot of friends who work in the service sector. Your waitresses, your bartenders, those who work at the car washes, those who work at your schools. We can't afford to live here. Many of my friends have to commute from across the county to work here, and we'd like to take advantage and participate in the community of Sterling Heights. We love the library. We love the parks. We love Sterling Fest. We love so many aspects of what is here, and I'd like to have my own place here. I'm not asking for a large single-family home. I don't need that much space. I don't need 1,300 square feet. I can make do with 350 square feet or 500 square feet. If I want to have an office, I would even be happy with just 800 square feet. It's not here. I'm excited for the 14-mile project. I think that's really cool. I'm not expecting to be able to be one of the first people in on those. I'd love to be, but I don't expect to be. The demand is real. The numbers that you guys, that I'm sure Mr. Radke has shared with many of you, as far as the need for housing in our city, it's profound. Young people are living with their families until well past the age of 30 now. And in my book, 36 and under is young. that really covers everything I have to say, but I hope each and every one of you take what I have to say here tonight to heart. I want to live here. I love living here, but I can't afford to have a place of my own. And I'm counting on you to fix that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Orchada. We'll go on to the budget amendments now. So the first one is National League of Cities membership and conference. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko?
Resolved to increase the 2023-24 general fund proposed budget by $35,000 for membership in the National League of Cities and attendance at the annual conference for 7 council members and 2 staff members. Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Zarko?
You know, when this has been brought up before, and actually this was my first opportunity to go to the National League of Cities representing the Michigan Municipal League, I said that I would check things out and find out if it was a good investment for us. And I really feel that $35,000 might be what we're spending for the membership and for the travel expenses, but what you can get in return will be way more than $35,000, and that's just with grant money that you become aware of. I mean, I was sitting there and found out that the CDC had a grant for mental health, which you wouldn't think that they would. They wouldn't think that was in their department, but with COVID and everything, they have a grant for mental health, which if we qualify, it would pay for itself, you know, for these grants. So I think that alone is worth it, is to look at the money that we could bring back to the city from what's available out there for us. So that's why I brought it up, and I'm in favor of giving it a try.
All right, thank you, Ms. Zarko. Anyone else? Council with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next is the lawn care management study. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion here?
I thought I already made the motion when I made the amendment. You need a second?
You have to make.
No, you gotta make, you
asked for the
gotta make
preparation.
the motion.
I make the motion that we,
It's written
yeah,
at the bottom.
at the bottom, okay, thank you. Resolve to increase the 23-24 general fund proposed budget by $25,000 to fund the environmental study to look at best practices in lawn care management. I think you all know that I've brought this
Okay,
up.
hold on, we need a second, Mr. Yanez. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Discussion, Mr. Yanez.
Yeah, so I brought this up many times in regards to the fact that we spend well over $1 million a year on lawn care and lawn maintenance. As we've listened tonight, we're going to be expanding our parks, our roadways and so forth. That means our lawn care bill is going to go up even higher. On top of that, there is a major impact, environmental impact in the use of lawn care equipment that is small internal combustion engine, two-cycle engines. One two-cycle, two-stroke engine will put out as much pollution as 10 to 12 cars. And if you just go ahead and take a look at lawn maintenance crews as they work around the city, their air blowers are motorized, obviously the lawnmowers and so forth. One of the things that we don't do here in the city that I think that we really need to do is take a look at our carbon footprint and the cost of carbon when we budget. So $25,000, obviously it could be less than that, depending on what bids come in at. But the fact of the matter is, when we're spending $1 million a year, that $25,000 can save us 10%, that's $100,000. On 5%, that's $50,000, and actually be more than that. Right outside the door here, we have this sterling green banner here. We're promoting ourselves as a community that's concerned about the environment. Obviously, we have a sustainability plan. Look at our rain barrels sold out in literally days because people care about this stuff. And I think we need to lead as the local government. And so therefore, I propose that we spend this money and try to have a smaller impact on both our budget and the environment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yanez. Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
just briefly, I guess I'm just curious what the goal of the study would be. And I don't say it facetiously. We already have no mow zones in our parks. Is the goal to not cut the grass? Because there will be grass that needs to be cut. We maintain our medians, we maintain our parks. I can't see the city going to a totally wild status. And I guess, to me, you know, I always think about the average voter, and I think about my father, who is the average voter. If I said to my dad, we were gonna stop cutting the city's grass, I think he would tell me that I'm crazy. So I just don't know, I guess I'm not sure what we're investigating. I think we're doing everything we can not to spend more money on grass, but if we want to maintain nature areas in a safe manner for our residents, we want them to be inviting, want to keep the mosquito population down, I'm not sure what else we can be doing. And maybe that's what the purpose of this report is. But I guess and maybe I'm just not understanding, Mr. Mayor, but I'm not sure where we're going with it. I guess that's my question. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Can I respond?
Radke. Yeah,
Yeah, so that is exactly the purpose of this, is to hire a professional engineering company that has experience in environmental engineering to tell us how we can reduce our footprint. I have no thoughts that we're going to completely stop mowing the grass. But when you look at, the contract that we let last year for mowing, fertilization, and then on top of that, weed killing, and then on top of that, we had to add algae, to kill the algae in our ponds because the fertilizer that we're paying for leaks into our ponds and causes algae bloom. So now we got to kill the algae. And it's like a dog chasing his tail. Spending this money, having an environmental impact study, maybe they'll tell us that we can, there's areas where we should plant low growth grasses and we only have to mow once a month or twice a month instead of 4 times a month or 6 times a month. The amount of water that we spend, I have no idea what we spend on watering our medians. And obviously, if 400 rain barrels sell out within a couple of days, they're free, but are gone within a couple of days, people care about the use of water in the city. And it's the taxpayers that are paying the bill on all this. So the small investment, and I'll use Mrs. Yarko's argument, $35,000, but we can bring back some grants and actually leverage that $35,000 to actually get us more money. It's the same thing here. So, this is the lowest of the low-hanging fruit, frankly, that by looking at how we maintain our properties, what we can do to reduce the amount of mowing and fertilizing and weed killing, I think that'll benefit, like I said, it'll benefit in hard dollars, but it'll also benefit the community in the fact that we're going to have a lower carbon footprint and a lower environmental impact. And not to mention, by the way, these blooms along the Great Lakes. I lived in Harrison Township for a while, and there was constantly weeds just going crazy along the shoreline. And everybody owned $1 million house on the shoreline went nuts. And that seaweed was going crazy because of all the fertilizer that gets into the water system and ends up in Lake St. Clair. So it's an environmental impact that's not just here in Sterling Heights, but it's watershed wide. And I think, we have to do our part.
Council, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko?
I just have one question, and I guess I would want to know if this is something that could already be done internally rather than get somebody, an outside source to do it for us. But you know what? It's not a bad thing to look into, and I'll tell you why. More and more you hear on the news that there are cities in southeast Michigan that are doing no mow May, which means you don't cut your grass the whole month of May. And maybe we can't do it in May, but maybe we can do no mow April, and that would save some money, or, it's worth looking into. I just don't know if we can do it internally or whether we have to do it externally. That would be my question.
Well,
Through the chair, I guess, to Mr. Vanderpool.
Mr. Vanderpool?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, Councilwoman Zarko, thank you. First of all, let me just quickly say that a lot of these best practices we are making some progress on. When you look at a lot of our medians and rights of way, We have implemented extensive no-mow zones. Mound Road is a great example. M59 is another example. A lot of our parks, we've implemented no-mow zones. So we are making steady progress in the area. Having said that, I don't think it hurts us to take a good look at, there may be some other best practices we're missing. And again, in the spirit of continuous improvement, I think there is some opportunities here to look at. I do not believe we have the bandwidth per se to do this internally with all the projects going on. So if we can get this consultant study done within the $25,000, I think it would be financially prudent.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Zarko?
No, that's it.
Okay, counsel, anyone else? Ms. Koski?
Through the chair to Ms. Varney, do you think that we could dig up $25,000 to do this without adjusting the millage?
Ms. Varney?
Oh,
No, we wouldn't have to adjust the millage. We would, basically, the budget would go into a very small use of fund balance for this year, which I would not be concerned about.
Same thing with the membership to NLC?
Well, yeah, so the current budget has a contribution to fund balance of about 36,000, so the NLC will basically take that to zero, and then this would take it, slightly, a slight use of fund balance, which, again, I wouldn't be concerned about.
Ms. Varney, don't we have that 0.1% from the RS&T and F that we're going to have use of for 10 months? Think about that. Thank you. You don't have to answer.
Okay,
Thank you.
I will. That's baked in, Mrs. Koski, that's baked in. That the millage that's dropping off, we need all of it to fund everything that we're doing in the budget.
No, we're saving it for the garbage contractors. Excuse me. Sorry.
Okay. Look, I'm going to vote yes on this, Mr. Yanez. I'm going to vote yes on it. I'm going to see where it goes. I'm not sure I quite understand what the purpose of it is either. I mean, I've heard it spoken about in generalities here. I guess maybe saying what the purpose of it isn't quite accurate enough. I'm not convinced that spending this money is going to then turn out to save the taxpayers' money in the long run. If we're talking about doing an environmental engineering study about using organic fertilizers or using more environmentally friendly fertilizers or methods, reducing our carbon footprint by not using, carbon burning lawnmowers and lawn equipment. I mean, as Mr. Radke was saying, I'm not sure, are we not going to be cutting the grass? Are we going to be planting different species? Are we going to be looking at this entirely differently? Those things, those are all going to cost more money, if we do that. If we adopt some of those things, they're simply just going to cost a lot more money. I mean, that's part of the reason that that even though climate change is real and it's affecting our lives, it's part of the reason why we're not making very much progress there, is because when you have 1 billion people in China and 1 billion people in India that need to eat food and they're living off $1 a day, they don't care about future generations and future generations. They care about eating today so they don't die tomorrow. And so in a very similar, but, on a much smaller scale here, yeah, if we want to make changes that help address climate change, they're just going to cost more money. So I'm not sure it's going to save money. I'm not sure what the scope of this study is going to be. I'm not sure what we get for $25,000. I'll vote yes to amend the budget and then keep an open mind on it when it comes back. And I guess I'll just take a look at the scope of services that a consultant is going to propose to us and try to find out what the ultimate outcome would be, and maybe if they've done work like this in the past, what recommendations they've ultimately made to other cities. I will say that it's an interesting segue, because through my involvement in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, these are the kind of discussions you have at NLC. These are the kind of discussions you have at Conference of Mayors. You talk to other cities that are 150,000 or so residents in size, 36 square miles, pretty fully developed, not a major downtown, not a major urban area, and then you get the feedback from them about what they've done to reduce their mowing costs and how they increase, sustainability efforts. So I think that's, if nothing else, I think that this is something that we'll be able to probably find more about through membership in the NLC even this year alone. So I'll vote yes. Council, anyone else, anything else? If not, okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries 6-0. All right, and that concludes that portion of our agenda tonight. Thank you once again to our wonderful employees and staff who've worked hard on this budget, and we appreciate your presentations tonight. Mr. Orchada, anything under communications from citizens? Can you raise the threshold for what's young a little, just a little?
A little bit more.
Birthday's coming up.
Your birthday's coming up. Happy birthday to you.
The next one, there's going to be no denying it.
No, I just wanted to say again that Workers' Memorial Day is on April 28th, and I hope that the city would recognize that or do a proclamation for that. But I understand that may not be in the cards anymore, given that this is the last council meeting for this month. But just wanted to let the public know that April 28th is Workers' Memorial Day, recognizing all workers who've been injured on the job or killed on the job. And so, thank you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate your comments tonight. So with that, Mr. Vanderpool, any reports?
Thankfully, no, Mayor.
Mr. Petrosak, why don't you, first of all, did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Petrusak.
Petrusak. Okay. If you had an easy name like Kashubsky, it might have been. So have you been here before? I have such a bad memory. I can't remember you ever filling in for.
I have presented.
Yeah, right, presented, but not sat here.
I've not sat here before, no.
We've had Don Denault.
You've had Don.
I think we might have even had Clark Andrews once.
We did.
I believe you did.
Okay, well, welcome here. Do you mind telling the community what kind of work you do at O'Reilly for the city of Sterling Heights on a day-to-day basis?
Sure, I've been at O'Reilly Rensselaer for the last 12 years, with the city attorney's office for the last 12 years, acting as an assistant city attorney. I generally handle all of the litigation for the city of Sterling Heights. I'm certainly happy to be here tonight filling in for Mr. Kashubsky. I was a longtime resident of Sterling Heights, grew up here, spent 25 years here, grew up over in College Park Sub, 18 and Hayes area. It's pretty much it.
Okay, well, I can tell you, I know that the residents of Sterling Heights, maybe they don't realize it. Obviously I do, and I know our council does, is that having O'Reilly as our city attorneys means we have a very deep bench of very talented people who are able to step up and do the job competently. And, that's what you get for hiring, one of the two best law firms. I didn't say which order. I didn't say which order. No, but no, in all seriousness, we appreciate you being here today and the work that you do for the city of Sterling Heights. We know there are a number of attorneys at O'Reilly, and they're all very dedicated and hardworking, and above all, they're very professional. And I think your work speaks for itself. So, good job tonight, and thank you for that. Any items for closed session?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing
Mr. Mayor.
tonight. You got that line down. If you've been watching the council meetings for what, like 9 years or more, you'll know that I've tried to keep the same script as Mayor Nadi and all those years. I just heard him do it. It worked, and why change it? Okay, council, any reports? Mrs. Schmidt.
Mayor Taylor, I would like to apologize to Mr. Orjada. It was totally not my intention to make you or any other resident feel that they're any less important to our community. I guess my point really is to the developers as far as affordable housing. What they're building is not affordable. And even the apartments they're building, in my opinion, are not affordable. So it's the builders that set their rates, and I would love to see more affordable housing. I think you're very important to our community, and I'd love for you to stay. But that was never my intention, to say that you were any less important than anyone else or anyone that's not a homeowner. I guess I just wanted to stress that the progression between high-density, 5-story, and single-family needs to be taken slowly. That's what my intention of that comment was. Okay? Nothing further.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I thought that Mr. Yanez's study and the fact that our entire rainwater barrel supply has sold out in the week that's been announced, I guess, kind of brought me thinking about something we've talked about before, but we should definitely talk about again, which is the creation of a stormwater utility for Sterling Heights. Other cities incentivize things like stormwater barrels through their stormwater utility as a credit-based system. If you make repairs to your property that would better drain stormwater, more permeable surface, and things like that, you would get credits. And businesses that do not, that have impermeable surface, that have heat islands, that do not plant trees, they would not get those credits, and they have to pay full freight. It's another way to kind of incentivize residents to improve the environment. And also, just so the residents at home know, the creation of a stormwater utility really doesn't change what the city pays. It would just change how we allocate the costs. Right now, we pay for stormwater out of our general fund. It's just a net cost for the city. So that means that everyone across the city pays on a per capita basis essentially what a stormwater fee would be. But that's not really fair, because you have big businesses like Stellantis that have huge swaths of impermeable surface, that have huge stormwater needs, and essentially they're being subsidized by the residents in our neighborhoods who don't have those needs. If we create a stormwater utility, we'd essentially take it out of the budget and allocate it properly, so the people who are the biggest offenders would pay the most. The people who aren't wouldn't pay the least. It was going to cost some money to create this, so I don't think we're getting this year's budget, but it's definitely top of mind. Because in Ann Arbor, they incentivize things like rain barrels through their stormwater utility, bioswales, tree planting, and that helps offset the cost. The final thing I want to say about housing is I agree with some of what Mrs. Schmidt said. Affordable housing really isn't being created, but it's also a supply and demand problem. If we create more housing in Sterling Heights at all stripes, high, low, middle, the supply increases, the less desirable housing will remain the same or go down in cost as the higher cost housing draws the residents who want those amenities, like anything else. If you build more, eventually you'll reach a point where I don't think housing costs are ever going to go down, but they'll stabilize. They'll stabilize across the board. So there'll be more, I don't want to call them low income, there'll be more affordable apartments, there'll be more moderate apartments, and there'll be more high-end apartments, because they'll all draw their own level. You know, and that's how capitalism works, that's how the market works. So the more we create, the more we will create. And it's just like Ann Arbor, they have apartments at the periphery that they are not as desirable anymore. That's more of the affordable aspect, because they're building high-end apartments downtown. The high-end apartment is not meant for the people in the periphery, but it draws people who would maybe have taken a moderate. What we have right now going on is there's nothing available. So people are cramming into units that probably are below their income level, below what they want, because they can't find anything else. If we create more options, it'll stabilize the entire system. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else? Mrs. Zarko?
Are we talking about housing? Because, I could, if that's, I still think we need to look into the Patterbook housing. And you know what? Sears catalog housing is starting to make a comeback, and it's true. So those are things we'd have to consider in planning, is where they would fit in, whether it be a duplex, quadplex, and it could be affordable. It could be, because when you consider the cost of building it, you better have 4 people living in that quadplex in order to pay for it. So, but that's the only thing I have to say if we're talking about housing.
Okay. Council, anyone else? Speaking of housing, I'm going to mine.
Good idea.
So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. With no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.